Hi there. The app. Sorry guys, but Zoom updated itself when I went to start it. All right, come on in. All right. Hey there. Sorry, it was weird. I went to start the class and Zoom updated itself and wouldn't let me get the class started until it finished updating. Did that happen to you guys? Do you have it set to update automatically?
No, not me. Good morning, everyone.
Yeah, so I don't know what the changes are. Sometimes the changes are minor, sometimes they're drastic. I hope they're minor. Let me look at there's this thing called recognize hand gestures. I think if people do this, it might raise your hand. Let me turn that on. Go ahead and do that, Monica. Raise your hand. No, maybe it's me. If I raise mine, I don't know. Anyway, we'll explore it later, but it's interesting. Things are happening. What is recognize hand gestures? That would be good. People just do that. Anyway, hi everyone. I just had started it and went to say goodbye to my husband and came back and it was still like not starting, just kind of rolling through this thing. I was, what's happening? Anyway, go ahead and head over to the chat and give me a little hey ho. Oh, wrong. I'm behind on opening my VDI. I was looking at your guys's Illustrator posts. And then here, let me get this started before I pay attention completely to what I'm saying. There we go. I had a strange morning. My son and a couple of his friends went on their own and I'm saying on their own, as you can see, that's the issue for me, not where they went, to Universal Studios. But the person driving is a relatively new driver. I mean, they're responsible. They're not like 16 or anything. But I've been just like, they left around 6:30 a.m. and I've been like this just to make sure they made it there. And we just got a little, they're there and they're going to spend the day there. And I don't know. Is this what it's like to let go? Anyway, so we just got the confirmation that they made it. The question will be after a whole day of having fun, driving home and not falling asleep. So hopefully everything will be good. All right, so I'm talking while my VDI is opening up. So I'm looking also at the Illustrator that you guys had put. I'm very impressed by all the details that Monica was writing about how she managed to make the slats work for her. I don't know if you guys check out here, let me put the link in the chat for everyone again to have. There's the Padlet link and here's the Padlet. So most of you guys put a lot of the color work that we did last week. So that's great. And then over here, Monica went ahead and chose different colors of other photos that she had. And so this is the same photo here and here. And yet there's different palettes you got depending on where she was putting her eyedropper. Okay, so anyway, this is great. And then Monica mentioned here how she had to use the grid, okay? And her whole theory for how to make the evenly spaced cladding, she made 3 skinny rectangles and then grouped and copied them, then grouped and copied them again, then grouped and copied them. And that's usually the best way, because then you know you're not having to create every single one, right? Because then you just do 3, and as long as they're perfectly well aligned, then you do 3 more, put them together, then you've got 12. Next thing you know, you finished the whole thing, right? And then she mentioned how the grid, so this she's got in the background is really why I wanted to show this one. This grid is not the same as that transparency effect. This one's literally a well-measured, exactly lined marks. But I have to say, when I see that you said that, but then when I'm looking at the grid and I'm looking at your house, it doesn't look like they align necessarily. So can you tell us more about what is it that how did you use that grid to make it more helpful to you?
I made the lines separately on the side on the grid.
Oh, okay.
And then put it over the house.
Put it on the house. Okay,
yeah.
That makes sense. Got
and
it.
Then I just made the lines, and then I did the shape builder tool.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't have to
got rid of the
like that. The
extras.
lines had to be perfectly there, so just cut out the surroundings.
So I'll show you the grid that she's talking about, which, by the way, makes sense now that she explained it, because yes, I use the grid to help myself do things in perfect line too. I haven't shown that to you, but then when I looked at her house, it didn't seem to align with a grid, and that's why I was like, wait, what? But I get it. You did the lines on the side using the grid. So let me show you how to use that grid, everyone. Because that really helps with things that need to be precise. But I'm still not completely done signing in. There we go. Give me 1 sec here. All right.
Yeah, I also noticed that I didn't really have to group it. I could have just grabbed it. But like
what do you mean that you
I actually grouped the 3 lines together instead of just marking them or selecting them together.
Yeah, I like grouping, because then that exact precise movement you made doesn't doesn't change. Okay. So actually I do believe in grouping, and that's why I like grouping. It helps you, worst case scenario, and then when you move the other 2, if you want, you can undo one group. When you've copied it, double. If you want, you can undo the first group and then just make one group of 6, or just have 2 groups of 3 that make one group of 2 that holds 6, etc. Either way, it kind of helps you to keep it unmoved. So yeah, I don't necessarily think it was a bad choice. Okay, so all right, so everyone, let's I needed to, let me go show you the file. So this is Illustrator Shared Drive and my class files. I need to come here to see them, because since I'm not using Bridge, this is what allows me to see the files. So we're going to start by opening this one that's called Adding Effects. Okay. So we're going to go to Illustrator and say File, Open. And then it's going to be the second file there called Adding Effects. And open that one. And then when that one's open, we're also going to go and hello. I think it's open. Yeah, it is. Then open a blank file, the one that we usually do stuff on before we go apply it. Okay, so make a new file. Just file new. And then we'll just say, okay, to create to that blank file. So here's the here's the adding effects file, and here's the blank file. And I want to show you, when you go up to say view, as much as you can show the transparency grid, you can also view the grid down here, show the grid. Okay, so if I click on show grid, this is that grid that she was showing us and talking about, and it's very precise. And so if you want to try and go do something now on this, and you create a little rectangle or something, and you create it right on the grid, it's easier to make sure that it's perfectly aligned when you create your second one. You hold down the Option key and create your second one. If you put it here then you can put it in exactly the right spot beyond the green, the pink lines and stuff like that, but it also just helps visibly. Okay. So anyway, that's the grid that she was talking about. Has everyone been able to, I don't know why I did the work, but was everyone able to turn it on? It's under view and show grid. Now you don't want to show transparency grid and grid at the same time, because then you don't see one or the other. It becomes a mess. So you have to view this only like on white background, because if not, you can't see it. Now, one other thing you can do to help you use the grid is let me make a rectangle. Let me change the stroke, put no stroke on it, and then put a color. So it's always easier to show. Okay.
Yeah, Deanna, I got
So,
a perspective grid and I can't get rid of it.
oh, can you go back to window? Sorry, go back to view and then just turn off. Where is it? Here. So if you turn it on,
Perspective grid.
then turn it off again.
Okay, now the right one is there. Thank you.
All right. And then the other thing I wanted to show you, so once you're seeing the grid, there's another choice, which is snap to grid. Now there's all these different snaps you can do, and usually the default snaps to this invisible grid in the background. But if you completely turn the snap to grid on, which is there under view, so you see the choice for snap to grid. Then when you go and cancel, when you go and do something, try to put a little box and make it in the middle of one of these. Let me get a bit closer. Even if you try to make something in the middle, I started in the middle, it won't let me. It forcefully snaps to grid. You see what I mean? So I'm trying to start it right there in the middle. It won't let me. It forcefully goes there. So when you want to do something that's really mathematical and exact and precise, turn on your snap to grid. Now, when you're trying to do something more free flow, the snap to grid is really frustrating because you're trying to make that line start there and it won't work. So you just need to know about it and need to know how to turn it on or off, right? But once you do that, then you count, you know, five boxes one way, 5 boxes the other way. And then there's not even any guessing whether it's exactly rightly distanced or not, right? You just know that it is because it's snapping to the grid, right? Two distant or 1 distance away or something like that. Okay, so have you all tried to snap to grid? And then, you know, if you move it around, it doesn't let you put it where you want it. It only goes right in those spots and spaces. So if you're doing something like a mandala or something like that, that's really awesome. So to create these kind of elements, that's perfect. But then you don't want to be tied to it the rest of the time. So then you'll go back to view and turn off the snap to grid so that you can now, if you want to, move it and drop it somewhere in the middle of these spaces like that, right? If that works better for your design. See how it's not on the grid now. Okay. Did that work for you guys? Give me a yes if it worked. If you see if you got it to work for you. Okay, so turn this off. And one more thing that someone mentioned once, I think it was you, Monica, maybe it was someone else. We're talking about and I don't want to go back to try to find who did it, but something else that I wanted to show you is the outline view. So anyway, let me just, I'm going to Control 0. Let's go back here to the adding effects. So when you look at this, this is a perfect example of something that's very precise, very symmetric, and was probably made originally with a grid, or if not, at the very least with grouping and copying the first 2 lines and doing the rest. Again, they could have a pattern fill. I'm not sure. It's probably a pattern fill now that I think about it. But anyway, someone had to create that pattern fill, probably doing it in that snap mode. But what I wanted to show you is the outline view. So here we're seeing all the shapes, all the colors, all the final results. But sometimes you want to see the way the structure, how it's made. If you head over here to view, you can just go to view outline, and then you just see the actual paths. Okay, so you're not, confused, because sometimes you don't know where the path is. So we haven't done much of that yet. Today we're going to do a bit more of that with the effects that we're going to apply. And then you might notice, but doing this makes me notice that, look at that down there, there's like a double ear on this one, which is probably a mistake. I don't know. This is a sample file. I didn't do it, but I'm noticing for the first time when I come into this middle in this view that there's two. And this is probably a mistake, because when you move out of that view, I don't think it really, and so you go back, the opposite is preview. Okay, so preview. Yeah, there's no need for it. So that's probably a mistake that was left behind that I wouldn't have noticed. So again, Controller Command Y sends you into outline mode, and then Controller Command Y takes you back into preview mode. Okay, so I'm actually looking at that tiger or lion there and this one here, and actually they're not exact. Maybe they build them separately, because see how the beard and the neck part here is a bit further apart than the beard or the neck part here. Anyway, so all right, so I'm going to head back down to Command 0 to see the entire thing. And for some reason this seems moved over a bit. Is that really moved over? Is it just mine? I think I'm seeing things a bit bigger today. Yeah, that's a bit more like it. Sorry, the resolution had changed and I was seeing things. There we go. Now I have a bit more space. Okay, I was being all crowded up. Okay, so we're going to be playing around with some of these with some of these elements. I want us to go to the layers and notice that this is an example of using 3 actual layers instead of just grouping. Okay. The background, if I turn it off, the faces, and the mains. Now, it's not that this is the most normal way to add things. It could have been that you separate the background for the mains and the faces. But this was a sample file that I found once, and I divided it this way because I want us only to work for this example that I'm giving you only on the mains. But I want us to actually, by the way, and that's why the other 2 are locked. I just wanted to show the whole layer is locked. So you can't, if you try to click around, you can't touch anything. The faces are still, the background is still, the only thing you touch and can move are the mains. Okay. In order to practice the effects that I wanted to show you. But I also wanted to show you how I want to be able to make a duplicate of this whole thing. And if I want to make a duplicate of this whole thing and it wasn't in 3 different layers, I could just duplicate the layer, duplicate the group itself, right? I could just go in and duplicate it to group. But right now, if I try to select, I'm going to go ahead and turn all, so just give me a second. I'm going to turn everything off, locks, I mean off. And I do a Command or Control A to select every single thing that's here. Give me a second, don't do it, just watch. If I Control Command every single thing that's here, and I say copy. Now I'm going to, because I wanted to create another artboard. Let me head over to, I prefer creating my artboards with the artboard tool ever since it's been this properties panel. So I'm going to go ahead, head over to the properties panel and make a new artboard right there. And I'll do this again, right? And then I'll paste. So when I paste everything, it doesn't create 3 new layers. See that? It chooses one of them, which I believe is the mains, and it put everything on the loose. Like it doesn't respect groups. It doesn't respect anything. See how everything is an absolute disaster now? Not when I say absolute disaster is every little circle and line and whatever. There's no way to distinguish what is happening is the point I'm trying to make. I'm going to Control Z to undo that, which is and another one of the reasons why I'm not too happy myself when we do this group. This one was made by whoever made it, did not do any grouping. So this is an example of, in order to organize it, I had to separate it into layers so that I could just make a space for the mains. Because when I opened this file, I was trying to get each face and I was like, there's no way. I'm just not going to spend my time dealing with it. So this is an example of a non-protectively made face. So if you were to want to, in this case, do that, you would have to individually, like I would lock everything here, right? And I'd get only my backgrounds. Sorry, I have to go back to this one. I have to go and select just my backgrounds. So if I say Command All or Command A right now, the only thing I'm getting is backgrounds, right? The rest is not being selected. Why? Because I have these locks. So I don't know that you need to do this. This is more like something I'm trying to tell you. If you want to try doing it sideways, that's fine. Command All, just get the backgrounds, copy, right? Command C or Control C. Then I move to this one. And this is the one that I wanted to show you. If I make a paste right here, right now, and I'm going to go over here to the different pastes, edit, there's paste, which is the Control V that we do. And then there's the paste in front, paste in back, or paste in place. And all of that would give it the paste of my stuff to be exactly in the same space, only, you know, in the stack or in the layers behind it or in front or in the exact same spot. Okay. But then you have this last one, paste on all artboards. And that one, when I do the paste, I just did a regular Command V. It should mean that when you paste, it goes that you have the same one thing pasted everywhere. And I have never been able to make that one happen. So I don't know why it's there. I've never been curious enough because I've never had enough artboards that need the same element to work. But the idea is that if you have many, you know, I've read about it. The idea is that you have 5 artboards and you say paste and the same thing pastes on all 5. As you can see, I did it here. Nothing happened. So I had to paste it in with a Control V. So all the others are really useful. I need to look into this one a little bit more, but it's got such a complicated little shortcut that I don't think anyone would ever use it. But anyway, so I brought in one set of elements, which is all the backgrounds, right? Oh, I forgot to make a new layer. I didn't want to copy this. I would have to make a new layer down here. Make a new layer in the bottom. And then in this layer 5, lock the other background and then paste it right here. And so now I can start creating my new set. Okay. Anyway, I'm going to undo that because I don't need to do that. I'm going to go backwards and get rid of this new layer and that copy. But I just wanted to show you how when you don't have things organized, you have to do like hundreds of workarounds versus how nice would it have been to have these lines numbered, you know, 1 through 8 and then work on them that way. So anyway, just consider that it's important. The original structure that you have makes it much easier to work with them from the beginning. All right. So what are we going to do here with these mains? First of all, what we're going to do is we're going to learn about some effects. There's a couple different places where the effects happen. Yes, Vera?
I can't get out of the outline view.
Okay, so either go back to Control or Command Y or go back to View. And now,
Okay,
once you're
Command Y.
once you're in outline view, the opposite of it is called preview.
Okay.
It changes name and suddenly it's like, huh, where did my outline go? It's just that now you're in preview mode and you want to go to outline view. When you're in outline view, now then you want to go back to preview mode. Okay, so that's why it's kind of confusing, but yeah. All right. Now, oh, one thing I didn't show you with regards to colors, and since you had the question about outline view, let me just show you one more thing about this one that you can use a lot. Can you tell here right now? How can you tell exactly where I'm sitting right now with no other? Can you tell if you are in a CMYK or in an RGB file? Just looking straight at what I'm looking. Is there any way for you to tell?
Yes,
How?
it says it up on top where the name is of the file.
Yeah, right up there, adding effects, AI, RGB, and it's in preview mode. That preview
Mhm.
mode is the opposite of outline mode. Okay, so and as I control Y, see how it switches to outline mode, but it still
Mhm.
says RGB. Okay,
Right.
RGB, or the one that we've been creating as our default one. I had you create as a default one, one called one in CMYK mode. So that one there, every time I open the same one, it keeps opening in CMYK mode, but this was RGB mode. So when you go over here to view, one option you can do is to look at proof colors. And when you click on that, it gives you a proof of a different, what the colors change to if you look at them in a different mode. I'm going to undo that. I didn't see much change there. Some colors really changed. If you want to see, let me see. The proof setup, we're working with the working setup for this thing is CMYK. If you want to see what different colors make it look like, if you hit, for example, monitor RGB, none of these colors seem to be changing much. So this is not a good example. I wasn't really preparing to show you this with this file. Looks like these don't seem to change much. Well, there was a tiny little shift there, but there's some colors that if you choose, it has a huge shift to go from CMYK to RGB. And here you can do that proof to see what's going to happen to your colors, but none of these seem to be changing much. The interesting one, if you're doing things really, if you're working with accessibility and are giving instructions and are trying to make sure that everyone understands your instructions, you might go and check a little bit these colorblind list ones, in the sense that this is what people with color blindness might see when they see your art. So this is the other type, which it's pretty interesting, right? I mean, this would be the extreme. There's most people have some in between version of that. But anyway, as long as there's enough contrast and stuff like that, it could work. But here, for example, some of these, I think that these are actually, these lines in the end are pretty well done regarding. The only thing that seems to be lost here is one of these beards, but for the most part, they do still have some contrast in them. But sometimes you might want to make sure, when I work with stuff for educational reasons, one of the things we should be considering is whether it's completely accessible to everyone. And one of the things you want to make sure is to have really good contrast between colors. And this art happens to have really good contrast. So it does work for color blindness, but if not, it doesn't. Anyway, I wasn't going to really show you that since we went up to this view again. Just explore some of these things. These are just different ways of seeing all your stuff, right? So try them out on your own. Okay, so let's take the first main. And since the rest is locked, or if you have been playing without them, lock them again and leave only mains unlocked, or open the mains and select them from here, you know, whichever way. But I'm going to have us go to this first one. Let me show you, there's two different places where you can do some pretty cool special effects. So I'm going to go ahead and let's head over to the effects right there. And there's two sets of effects here. Then there's a line and there's another one. And these are the Illustrator effects. These are the ones that we can use on vector files, which is what we're doing. These are Photoshop effects. So these are not going to be something we're going to apply to this material. It could have been that you had placed an image at some point. Huh. Hold on. I said it hadn't worked. I was saying something hadn't worked when I did the paste in other artboards, but I'm finding that I have another artboard here, which is not how I started. So something did get pasted. I'm going to Control Z my way out of everything I did so that I'm back to the beginning. Here we are. But that surprised me to find that there. Okay. So we're only going to apply the Illustrator effects because these are vector files. Okay. So once you bring in a photo, if you want to create put in these effects, I highly recommend doing it in Photoshop. It'll do a better job. But otherwise, these are the same effects you will find in Photoshop that you can apply to pixel-based images or raster images. So we'll focus on these. Now, beyond this place, and we're going to go explore some of these now. Another place where you can do your effects, you can go to Window. And where is my toolbar? It's not a panel. Hold on. Trying to remember what the name was for it. Maybe it's not, it's a toolbar. It's a tool. Let me show you what I'm looking for. Maybe it's not maybe it's not in the panels, because we used to have, this is an effect, right? And I taught you this one, I think at the beginning, the width tool. But when we used to have the original, let me shift over to Essentials Classic. So when you shift over to the Essentials Classic mode, under that tool, the width tool, you clicked and held, there was a whole bunch of tools here that were all effect tools. And I'm looking for that, for all those effect tools in the regular Essentials. And I'm not seeing, I thought that it might turn into a panel, but it's not. So then you're just going to have to do them here from the effects. They're the same effects, but it was a bit more conscribed to just that one. All right, so let's go ahead and select the first one. Let's go to the effects up here, and later we can shift our view to Essentials to see the difference between having them as tools. But then you can go to some of these that are, let me go to these Distort and Transform to start with. These are the ones that those tools would give you. And so let's start with the ones that are a little bit more obvious what happens. So let's start, for example, with the bottom one here that says zigzag. And look at what happened to the perfect circle. Now, that perfect circle is the default zigzag, but you can use this panel that opens up to choose how to modify. So you can decide that you want to make the zigzag deeper, higher, better. Remember the stars a little bit here, and that effect. You can make it have a bigger mane. You can have it have more ridges, less ridges. Okay, it would be a bigger or a smaller mane. You could have the corners be smooth instead of the tips be tight. Relative or absolute, like this is 0.25 is an absolute. And if we were to look at the size, relative would be with respect to what we've got, make it so much bigger or so much less. Anyway, so make sure you have your preview turned on if you don't, and then you can see what's happening. Choose the main that you want and play around with it. Now, once we decide which one you want, I'm going to have it have less ridges in this case. Maybe a few more. You can type it in there too if it's too much, and have it be pretty spiky. And then I'm going to say okay to that. Now, once you've applied that effect, if I want to change it, if I go again and go back to that same effect and I go Distort and Transform, zigzag, it doesn't let you pick it up. So it's a little bit different than, I keep referring to Photoshop, and not all of you guys know Photoshop. See how it says, this will apply another instance of the effect. So it would be an effect upon an effect. If you just wanted to edit the effect that you have, because you said, oh no, I wanted it less spiky or more spiky, then you have to double click the name of the effect in the appearance panel. So the appearance panel over here, okay, so I'm going to say cancel. So here's the properties and here's the appearance panel. Notice that something new appeared, which is the effect we just used. Okay, so that wasn't there before. So that's the effect applied to this. If I am clicking on something else and I'm in the properties panel, there's no effect, nothing there. But if I click on something that has an effect, it shows up. And now I just want to edit, and these are editable, but only in this way. So I'll double click on it. And now I can decide that I want to make it a bit less big or a higher, bigger. Okay. As opposed to applying an effect on top of the original effect. Got it? But this will only appear here once an effect has already been applied. And then when you select something else that doesn't have an effect, it won't be here. Now, if you want to get rid of the effect because you don't like what you did, you head over here into this little trash can to the right of the effect and you say, delete effect, and you got rid of it. Okay. Now I'm going to undo that because I didn't want to get rid of it. So I did Command and Control Z. Okay, so that's how you get rid of the effect and then see it again. Now, again, this is a reduced panel. I like seeing my entire panel. So if you click on these three little dots, then you have all of the panel here, and then the effects will show up a little bit differently, kind of one after another in a row down here. But that kind of works. Now, as you can see, there's the effects over here. So let's select another main now. And now, instead of going all the way to effects and whatnot, you can just go from the appearance panel itself. You can just go over here and choose the effects. It's the same thing, but you might want to do it from there. So I told you how to go selecting this, and you could go from here to apply the effects. Or if you have the appearance panel already opened up, you can click over here on effects and open them from here. So the ones that we were using were the distort and transform, and that's where zigzag is. But there's so many under each one of these that you might want to explore what each one does at some point. But let's keep going with these distort and transform, which kind of works for these little lions. Now I'm going to show you the twist. Click on the twist and just start changing. Let Shayna in. Hold on. There we go. All right. So when you're trying to do a twist on an angle and you're doing a round thing and twist, nothing much is happening. Here we go. So I'm going to say I'm trying it. It's not working. There's not much to twist. So I'm going to cancel that one. You need to see what kind of effects work on what. I miss the actual tool, and I'm going to show you the actual tool in a second. So let's head over to tweak. The tweak one kind of works pretty well here. Let me Control plus. So hi, Shayna. Can you hear me? Yeah, so we're on this adding effects file. No problem. We're just applying effects to the mains of these lines. Anyway, so this one here, it just makes like completely bizarre shapes, right? It's tweak is just kind of random. You won't really be able to control what it does or doesn't do, but you'll have some fun if you want it to be more vertical or horizontal changes. You go here and you play. So you want more of that, more vertical. I'm going to come down more horizontal, or both kind of evenly. So then it spreads all over. I'm going to say okay to that one. Let's go to the next one. And now there's trying to find the one that twirls. Let's see this scribble, stylized scribble. This was interesting. You can't see it well. Let me zoom in. You know what? Let me zoom in first before I open that one. Control plus 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 plus. So here's my lion mane. Now I'm going to head over here and do the stylized scribble. And see, you couldn't see it before, it turns it into like a little scribble. And then you can decide to have more or less of it. You can change the order of that scribble. You can space it a little bit more. Right? You can have variations so it's not even. It could be a little bit curvier or much stronger. The width, I'm making it much thicker or less thick. So it's a pretty fun one to use. Again, keep working on changing the angle of it. Okay, so did everyone find that one? If you want it to be extended, going inside the lines or outside of the lines of the original path, move that top one. Variations in the width. Anyway, so when you're done playing around with these things, which, you know, you can play for hours with every one of these, you say, okay. So there we're just working on creating different mains for our different lions. And I'm showing you different effects. So now, to repeat to everyone and for Shayna's sake, when you go select a regular main that hasn't been affected yet, when you go to the appearance panel, nothing's there. But once you do have an effect and you head over to the appearance panel, there it tells you the effect that you've created. Okay, so this is a scribble effect. And if I click on this one, I've got the tweak effect. If I click on this one, I've got the zigzag effect. If I want to modify one of these, I go, maybe I want to make this one a little bit wider or whatever. I have to come over here and just double click on it. And then I can just say, okay, I really wanted it to be more whatever or whatever not. Okay, I'm going to cancel. I didn't want to modify it. Now, if I were to apply another effect, so let me see if we go to the same scribble and I choose another effect now. So say that maybe now I will go ahead and make this effect and I apply the zigzag on it. Now I am messing twice, okay, with this panel. I have two effects on it and some might work well, some might not. In this case, I don't think this really is a very happy choice, but I'm going to say, okay, just to show you what happens when you have more than one effect. Okay, so when I have two effects there, and when I go over here, the rest of the effects one by one show. When I show this one, it just says no, and the information, it tells me you need to open the appearance panel. So in this mode, you can't see both effects at the same time. How do you open the appearance panel? A, by either clicking on these three to see more, or B, I had already opened it. So in my case, it's already set up there. I had already put the appearance panel up in my thing. Or D, or B or C, you go to the window and open the appearance panel from here. So any panel that needs to be opened, it should be up there, and there it is. And so now when I open it, I see that there's my zigzag effect and there's my scribble effect. And I can see if I turn off the eyeball of the scribble effect, what do I have? Oh, that was my zigzag effect. I turn on the scribble effect. Oh, that was my zigzag effect. Okay. And if I go, nah, I don't really like one, or I do like it or whatever, I can just say, I don't want the zigzag effect on this one. I can go back and select it and just delete that. And so now I'm back to just having the scribble effect. Okay. So play around with those choices a little bit. Some effects will do well, one on top of the other, others won't. And some effects won't work with a circle like this main, and that's why I might be avoiding some of them. I can also, instead of going all the way to effects over there and to look at all of these, I could also be picking it up from effects. But let me show you something that when you come up here to the effects, the last effects that you already applied show up there. And if any of you guys are in Photoshop, this is the same for Photoshop. So if you applied effects in Photoshop, when you go back to the effects menu right there, the top remembers the last choices you made with the settings that you made. Okay. So if I were to want to apply the zigzag with the exact settings that I applied the first time, now, not the first time, but remember that I applied zigzag to this one. So if I want to this one and I got rid of it, but the effect still is remembered. So if I click on that, it'll give it the same one that I had applied to that one. Okay, so it's like a little quick memory in case you want to reapply the stuff. But now I didn't really want that one. So I'm going to delete it because I don't want to apply effect on effect. And then I'm going to go to a couple of others. Now here you can just convert your shape, but I'm not interested in doing that. So the pucker and the roughen is a good one too. So I'm going to click on roughen. And it's kind of similar to that tweak, but we choose which way. I love this one. That's my hair in the morning, guys. Oh, how funny. I swear. And then again, make the corners harder or smoother or edgier. All right, so once we have fun with all the different little poor lions, they were so happy until we started messing with their effects. What other kind of effects there are here are some might have to do with actually the original path that you're working with. There's a ton I'll keep showing you. But for some of these, it's better to have a different element. I'll show you the pucker and bloat, but this one's a little bit harder to have it. Here, I'll show you the pucker and bloat. This one's good when you're doing like individual elements, pucker and bloat. So it's, oh, I guess it does. That's interesting because it does it to the whole thing. Okay, it's not so bad. I'm accustomed to using these as a tool. I'll show you the tool effect right now. So right now, there you go. I guess you can go, inwards or outwards. So it is actually a useful effect for this circle. Now, the missing tools that I told you, I don't know how to access other than changing to Essentials Classic. So I'm going to make you change to Essential Classics because all of these are applying the effect to the entire shape, which is fine. But when we have the tools that we have in Essentials Classic, I'm going to go and switch to Essentials Classic. There should be another way to bring them up, but I can't figure it out. But in Essentials Classic, so everyone go up to the to where you change your workspaces, and let's move over to Essentials Classic. Now you get a ton more tools here. And if your tools are long, it'll be, in my case, there's so many tools that they don't fit that I have to go to this, like I don't see the bottom of the tool. So I have to go over here to this little double-headed guy and make it double up. So the tools are all compressed in two lines so I can see them all. And this is what I wanted to show you. I'm going to select this. I'm going to go up right here. And this guy I had shown you at the beginning as the width tool. I believe I showed you guys the width tool. Yeah, to make sure that I didn't win the other class. Click and hold. And you have similar to the ones that I've been using. There's a few more. But not only that, but when you have a whole selection like that, you could keep choosing it, like choose one and go away, or you could choose and see what Illustrator does when you have a whole panel of stuff. You can click on this line that's at the end and it kind of separates. And now you have a little panel of just little tool effects. So let me show you that again. You can click and hold and choose a tool from here. Period, and it goes away, just like we've always done. Click and choose a tool. But say that you want to apply a different ones of them, you can actually go to the side of that set and separate a little panel, and then you have this little window. And now when you hover over these, you'll see the names of what they do. So now watch. The reason that this is different than applying the entire effect is because when you click on one of these, I'm going to go to the twirl tool. I can choose on what part of this I want. Now, all the rest of these apply to the effect to the entire circumference. But with these tools, with my mouse, I'm going to make it a little bit small. You can choose one area. So I'm going to click right there and I'm going to make a little twirl on that. And then I'm clicking here and I'm making another twirl on that. And this one works however, how long you hold and how, so I'm going to click and hold it for a little while and it keeps going. If I double click on the tool, then it gives me twirl option. So interesting. It doesn't work here to double click on the other. It is. Here's a twirl option. So I might want to change the direction of the twirl, or I might want to change the twirl rate. So I'm going to go and make it have less twirls and I'm going to say, okay. And then when I go over here, it does more or less twirls in a different direction. So again, double click on the twirl on the tool and you can play around with that effect. So you can make it be bigger or different angles or more intensity or whatever it is that you want to do here. I'm going to go ahead and instead of simplify, I'm going to make it even tighter. I'm going to make it say, I'm going to say 92 and I'm going to say, okay. And the next one gives me more twirls and stuff like that. So as you can see, when you have it, the effect at the tip of your hands, you can play around with that more than having it apply to the entire shape. Okay. Did that work for you all? If I choose that effect, though, it's not here in appearance. It doesn't show as an effect. You see that? It's more like a thing we did to that path, but it's not an effect that I can change. So I just wanted to finish that versus this one is an effect that I can change. But this one is not. So it's harder. You have to go, back to the tool. It's harder to get it to do and undo. Yes. Monica?
With a twirl tool, can I make it twirl into different directions?
Yeah. So here I made these in a different direction. So when you double click on it, here, like over here at the twirl rate, I had 0. I had it to one side or to the other, and it shifts the direction in which it's going to twirl.
Okay.
Okay. And you can change the brush size as well, and make a small tool. If you head over to this, and I believe if I make my tool here smaller, so say that I make my tool instead of 1.3, if I make it to be just 0.5, and here 0.5 again, just to keep it round for now, to make it cleaner, 0.5, and then I say, okay, then my tool is smaller. I can get tinier little, it's harder to see, hold on. So now I'm getting little tiny twirls out of it, see? Twirls on top of twirls. Because I changed the size of my brush. See how before it was much bigger and now it's much smaller. And of course, it works on the outside of the path, on the path itself, on the edges, not on the fill in this case. I'm going to click away so you can see just the effect of it. How did that work for you guys? So if I go back to one of these other effects, the pucker, the blow, this, let me go to the scallop, the crystallized tool. So in this one, I can go in and just kind of create little bits in certain parts. Down, I click and I drag and I move it in. And the longer you click on something, the more it affects it. I'm going to go over here to this one, which is a scallop tool. And you pull in or you pull out. I'm going to go to the wrinkle tool. And that kind of wrinkles my whole lineup. So remember the other day when you were asking, I believe Shayna was explaining how she wrinkled her lines, you guys. And I said, well, there's another way that I hadn't shown you yet. So this is the tool that I was talking about. Do you know what I meant when she drew by line those little rectangles? and she just used her pencil and just kind of made a not straight line. Well, the other way would have been to make a straight rectangle, like the one that I just shared with you guys here. And then you can just wrinkle the lines of it a little bit. See, there you go. And then maybe wrinkle a bit more or a bit less. And the rate of wrinkling there, it was pretty wrinkled. So over here, Shayna was demonstrating how to use the grid in the background for accuracy and stuff. So that's what this one is all about. But I'm just showing you a different way to make
Okay.
that, to make this more jaggedy line, right? It's just a different way to do that. Okay. So here I've applied 3 or 4 different edges to this one. I'm going to select this again, and then the pucker and bloat makes things bigger or smaller. So sometimes it's not necessarily the most logical one to use with this circle, but so that's the pucker tool. So if I go to an edge over here and I click, and it kind of shrinks things into it or down. Here I'm going to shrink that guy in. Or the bloat, it's going to expand it. It's going to go boop, and it pulls things out. So it makes things bigger or smaller. So depending on your shape, these will have different effects. Sometimes it'll work, sometimes it'll not. So you pay attention to everything I'm applying to this one. In the end, it's not that different than the automatic, the top one that just was called tweak, right? Except for that you can try to play with it a little bit more. So over here, this top one, this is the warp tool, allows me to just move things a bit higher, a bit lower. Just move this one over there. That's the warp tool, kind of shifting things around a bit. So it just kind of affects the area that you're touching. Okay, so everything doesn't have to be completely like perfect mathematical Illustrator like for it to work. Like the face is all symmetric, and then suddenly you have this wild mane. That could look kind of cool. So I've applied like 85 different of these tools to that one. But in the end, this was the one that was called tweak. Now I couldn't control it that much, but there it went. And then here with one thing and the other, I kind of got a similar-ish effect, except for the hairy things that you get with the crystals and the scallops. All right, so, and there's so many of these effects that it's hard to know when to stop, but let me just show you, there's one more, which is a bit different, which has to do more with effects of light. Okay, so over here under stylize, I'm gonna go ahead and apply a drop shadow, and this is something that might become very handy because, as you can see, this suddenly is becoming a little bit more and as if it were like Photoshop. I'm going to go ahead and say okay to that because I want to approach. So there, that suddenly it doesn't look like something made in Illustrator. As far as all the things we've made in Illustrator, it looks a bit more like I'm having a Photoshop effect on it, right? Now I'm going to select it again, and because it's an effect, I can edit it by clicking over here. And one thing I want to say about shadows, the default color is black normally for shadows, but at least what I do in Photoshop, and you have to be careful with where you're applying it. Most of the times a shadow isn't black. It's really a really dark color of the version that it's against, right? So instead of just having that be a black shadow, I'm going to select it again to make it more realistic. Not that this matters more in Photoshop where things have to be realistic. I don't know how realistic these lions and manes end up being, but if I go to color over here and click on that, it gives me the color picker. Then I could go and choose a tone of this deep orange, which, by the way, I'm noticing I can't necessarily pick from the color picker in this instance. So I'm going to go to the eyedropper tool. Oh, I need to get out of this one. Go to the eyedropper tool, choose this orange, right? Or maybe even that is part of that, like this dark here. Oh, see, it was a pattern. I was right. So I'm going to undo that. So I'm going to choose, yeah, it's not, it's not an orange. That's why it wasn't choosing it. It's a pattern. Okay, so I'm gonna have to create it. All right, so sorry, see how I'm trying to pick this here, but when I'm picking it, it's giving me over here instead of a color. Remember how we filled with patterns the other day? It's giving me a pattern fill instead of a color. So I'm gonna have to go back to the drop shadow, choose this, and then do my best to go to an orange-ish that seems to match this background over there, and choose a deep version of it. Really deep, so it's still a shadow, but it's deep brownish versus pure black. And then when you say okay, that shadow becomes a little bit more realistic. Okay, so if I go ahead and show you what I mean, if I go undo, that was there, that's the black shadow. And if I go ahead and do redo, that's the black shadow. So it might be subtle, but it certainly, I think, is more believable. That said, you can make the shadow be much stronger, less strong, more opaque, less opaque. You can have a slight, I prefer always much lighter shadows myself. So I'm going to go with a much lighter shadow. It does the job of separating. You can say how far you want it to go one way or the other. If you move these numbers up, it's going to pull over to the right or get further from the shape or closer to the shape. So I'm going to move this up and see how it's moving away, or move it back down. That goes out, and then this is up or down. Right, so you play around with where you want that shadow with these numbers. And then how blurry you want it, because you might, in this case, it's 0.064. You can make it even blurrier, or you can make it a very sharp shadow, right? So it depends on the numbers that you put in here. All right, so those are all different things that you can do. You can also do, so I'm done with that, but I'm going to go put another effect. So this is an example of putting two effects. So now that's where I did the shadow and under stylize. I could decide that I want, where's the bevel? One of these had like the bevel effect. No. Okay, so the nearest I can get is a little inner glow or a feather. Okay, I'm going to feather my shape. So if you guys know what it's like in Photoshop to feather your shape, it's to make it softer, the edge not so defined. So now if I decide to feather my shape, instead of having that defined line, and I say okay and click away, then see, it doesn't have a specific ending. Now here it's actually more obvious because of the drop shadow. If I didn't have the drop shadow effect, it would be doing that. But since I have the drop shadow, they're actually kind of counteracting. Let me go over here to the appearance panel and get rid of the drop shadow for a second. I'm gonna turn off the drop shadow. So I didn't get rid of it. See how the feather effect made my shape that was a very sharp shape with a fill suddenly looks like a little soft blur, and that's because I feathered the edges of that shape. So you're beginning to see more possibilities of how to make Illustrator not be just the stark straight line that we've done up until now, including these little lions that are so symmetrical, and yet here he goes, he has a little poof hairdo. Okay, so once again, when you have more than one effect, you won't find it here. You have to go to the appearance panel, which I happen to know looks like that, but you can also click up from here, and then you can work on each one. So if I want to double click on the feather and give it more or less feathering, so that it's still soft, but not so soft. But again, the moment I turn on the drop shadow, that effect, that doesn't really work well. So, you can either have the feather or the drop shadow, but the feather and the drop shadow kind of undo each other. So I'm going to turn the drop shadow off. But there you go. There's his little poofy hairstyle. So, and you can keep exploring those forever, right? But now that you know how to operate them and explore them, hopefully, my hope would be that you guys would create, maybe they don't need to be on the lines, but you can create a whole nother set of mains. And so this one, you see, will be undoable, right? Because you can't undo the ones done with these tools. So these two won't be undoable. But the rest are effects that you can undo or change. Let's go ahead and save this as, so that when we open the original one, it has the round circles again. So we're going to say File, Save As. And to the adding effects, we're going to say maybe underscore Diana or try one, or, you know, like give it first version, and then go share it, save it in your own spot. What I need to save it in my own spot. You guys can do it wherever you want. And I'm going to save it over here. And then we'll say okay, and okay to that. And then when you open the original one again, you start with good old circles again. Share drives, Illustrator drive, download Illustrator class files. And then when you open the adding effects again, it's back to having the round mains, and you can keep playing around a little bit and save it as version 2. And then, of course, go to the Padlet and give me some of your wild mains. And I would appreciate if you guys decide to create a shape or two of your own and apply some effects and tell me what effects you applied. Now, I'm going to show you a few other things that are a bit more than just effects, but any questions, anything you want to show, anything that you want to ask about? So this little set of tools, I was trying to find how to find it in the essentials. So I don't know in this essential modes where it went, because if it's not under that and it's not a panel, well, that was bugging me, because over here, you, as I said, you apply the effect to the entire thing. I like the possibility of using the tool, but I can't believe that they just don't have a way to turn it on, but I don't see. So I'm back to the regular essentials, and I just do not see anything here under effects that shows up as just a tool, you know. I really don't know. So now that I've switched, they're gone again. So just for continuing, let's move back. I'll move back to Essentials Classic. I don't know where it goes, where that goes. So yeah, anyway, so I wanted to show you a couple of other things. Now,
Dana,
what?
if you move to Essential Classic, you lost that Layer tab.
I lost which tab?
Layers.
Oh, they're down here where they used to be. You're right.
Oh,
You can put it up there. Yeah, so
How'd
you're
you-
right.
how'd you
So
do that?
it ends up automatically. It's one of these little open way. Essential Classic it is a bit more complicated finding stuff, but once you're accustomed to where they are, you just know where to go. And so they're down here and you turn them on and off. But I like seeing my layers all the time. So what you can also do is grab this layers tab and just drag it up here and put it in the place where you've been accustomed to seeing it. So then you can have it there. You know what I mean?
thank you.
So things are movable. And then the artboards, I like the artboards here in the Essentials Classic a bit better. But guys, I've been using Essential Classics for 20 years. So, or in the Essentials they do right now in this properties panels is new. And I'm getting more accustomed to it. So of course I find more comfortable what I've used forever. But if you guys have been using the regular Essentials forever, that's becoming norm. So whatever you choose, in the end, it's all movable and changeable. So in the Essentials Classic, see how I have all these things already laid out. So when I want to use my brushes, I open this, there they are. When I want to use my appearance, I open that. When I want to do my artboards I open that, right? Layers I just threw over there, but otherwise layers tended to be over here, and I opened that. So it was all there, and then you just had the properties panel here open all the time, and you open your individual ones. Here's the swatches. Remember, we did all the whole swatches thing and colors and all of that the other day. So these are symbols, which I haven't even shown you. These are the tints and shades. So it was all kind of there. These are the colors. These are the things I've been showing you. They had them all laid out, but the truth is you don't need them all the time. Here's the gradient tool. You don't need them all the time, right? So when you're first confronted with all of this and all these tools, it's like, what do I do? So I think the idea of going to the essentials is to simplify, to have the main set of tools is not a bad idea for learners. But in the end, at some point, you're going to need more than this. And then you start putting them. So every time when I like the original, I'm going to reset my essentials. It doesn't come with anything here. This is the basic essentials. All of those appeared because as I've been teaching you, I've been opening things. So I'll go, you need to open this. And so I'll put appearance. And so when you do that, it pops in and then you just drop it in there and it begins to put in the little, it puts it there. Then you open another one and you say, I don't know, I wanted color that we did color the other day. You just pop it in there, right? So that's kind of what I've been doing to kind of replicate in my own way that which I was missing, because I like having them more handy. I'm going to reset to the regular essentials so that they're not there anymore. This to me feels a bit barren, but it's your comfort level, right? You need to decide what works for you. Anyway, I'm going to keep going with the essentials. Basic one, although now I got rid of some of the things I was using there, but that's fine. This will be, again, every time I need something, I'll open it up and then it'll be there handy when I need it. So, I wanted to show you a few more things. So yeah, thanks for mentioning that, Mason, because it gave me a chance to show that you can modify any version of the panels. What I don't see how to modify, on the other hand, thank you. As I said it, I remembered. Look, I'm so glad I said this. Thank you, Mason, for your question, because I was showing you how to modify the panels, and then I went, wait, here's how you get the other tools. In the tools panel, you go to these three little dots and you choose the missing tools and you add to them. Duh, I forgot about this. So I can go over here and these are every possible tool that could be here on the left side. And I can look for the ones I miss, and here's that set, okay? So I can go ahead and say that I want to add the warp tool. And I believe you drag it. Let me see. I think I just drag it to the bar, or I double click on it. There's a way. How do I make it appear? There's a way to put it in there. Or maybe it's just giving it to me. And that's it. And I have to do this to find it. No, there is a way to put it in there. I drag it to itself. Yeah, I dragged it there. So there, I put it in there. So then if I grab the twirl and I put it in there and the pucker, yeah, so I rebuild that. So when it goes gray, okay, so I can just rebuild that set. So then when I'm done and I put this away, then I click and hold, there's my set rebuilt. Okay, there you go. I found it. So that's the thing. When you want a tool that's missing, you click on these three little toolbars, you find it, and you guys don't know what you're missing because you haven't learned all of these tools that you're missing, but say that you want something desperately, you go over here and you find it, and then you drag it back on. Okay. I used to show people these tools, but they're gone now anyway. But yeah, a lot of these are gone because they're not so necessary anymore. So say I grab this magic wand tool and drag it in here and put it there somewhere. So I can either put it on top of a tool to have it be under that, or make it have its own space. Then I go away, and then now this one has its own space. And what the magic wand tool allows me to do is to select things, in this case, of the same color. So see how it selected that main and that main when I clicked on this one? So anyway, if I click on this main, it'll choose this one and that one. It allows you to choose things the same color. So if I click on this, oh, the other things are closed or locked. So I'm going to unlock the faces and I'm going to choose this tone of pink. And so those ears are the same tone. Okay. And so see how the different ones got selected. I'll click on these and suddenly many of these guys have all this color. So that's what Magic Wand. It selects things of the same color. Anyway, that's how to modify your tools. I'm learned it myself. I knew it, but I hadn't had to do it because again, I'm only using the essentials tools ever since I've been with you guys. So I hadn't missed my tools, but so I'm going to reset it. When I reset it, all of this that I just did is going to go away. Okay. Oh, no. The tools stayed. The tools that I added stayed even in my reset essentials. That's interesting. Is there a way to reset? No. Right. Reset my tools. There you go. Now I reset them to the norm. By the way, you could set your tools to advanced, and then it gives me all of the tools. So even though I'm in the essentials mode, I could set them to tools. Okay, so guys, I'm doing this for your sake, but I'm also learning myself that we could have had that. And then just as much as you can create your own, I'm going to go back to the basic set. As much as you can create your own layout, your own panel. You don't have to live with these four. Create your new workspace and you put everything you want in it. You can also create your own toolbar and put the things that you use in it. All right, so let's go back to what I was going to show you about some other type of effects, which I'm not sure it's going to work with a circle, but let's try. Which is these guys, the warped. I don't think it's going to work with a circle, but let's see. What if I'm going to do a little flag? It does. You can. Okay. So you can choose a shape and have it have a flag. As you can see, this is the flag shape. Once you open one of these, all you do is open one and then you have them all here. You have an arc shape. You can do this to text. You know, you write a straight line of text and the text is arcs. So usually I show it with text and we're going to do that in a second, but I guess it works also with things like circles, which I thought would be more immune to this. But anyway, you can give these things different shapes. I think it probably seems to work less with a circle than it was in other directions, but yeah. So I'm going to go with arc lower, bulge, shell upper. Okay, so it doesn't make much sense to me to do this to a circle still, because in the end you can just make a shape that's that way. But there you go. That's another set of things that you can do. But let's go ahead and create, actually, go to the other, for those of you who had the other one open, Shayna, this is just another regular, a blank file, but we turned on the hide the grid. So we went to view and show grid. That's what this one is. Okay. And so I'm going to move this out of the way. Let's go ahead and write something. I'm going to go on the type tool and let's write a sample line for warping. Of course, I could have used something much more fun than saying sample line for warping, but there we go. We wrote sample line for warping. Now, I don't know what size it came out or not, but once you finish writing it, just go back to the selection tool and select it. And then here you can make it bigger if it came out too tiny, or you can give it another font. You know, right now I don't need anything very fancy. I'm just showing you the basics of changing it. Choose whatever font you have. I'm going to go back to the basics because I really don't, it's not about that. And I just want to make it a bit bigger. So I can also make it bigger there. And the reason I'm showing you this is because now I do want to put those effects that I just showed you, the warp. And this is kind of cool with things like text. Okay. So here I have a text where I'm going with arc, horizontal. So if you can move it above the line or below the line, or I can make it arc vertical. I can distort it in one way or the other. I mean, by the time you're done with this, you can just do whatever, you know, and this is just the first one, just the arc. You can really play around with stuff. You can do this to lines, to shapes, to circles, as you already saw, but now we will apply the flag mode to this one, and I'm going to make it more bendy or warpy or horizontally. Right, so depends on how much you affect it. Since we're not going back, I keep going effect on top of effect. It's becoming kind of, I'm going to cancel out of all of that. And again, back to warp, choose just one, like that one. This is kind of weird because it really isn't readable anymore. So maybe not the wave one for text. Cancel that. Now, what happens when you have text and you apply some of these will, of course, drop shadow. It's great. You can have a little drop shadow for text. So that one just looks like a drop shadow. That's not strange. But when you want to do these stylized ones to something like text, text is not the same as the shape, right? So if I go and try to apply the scribble for it, it just turns into a scribble. Like you lose, it's just the shape, you lose what you had. Okay. So it's not like it'll just not scribble the line, the word, because this is still text. In order for it to scribble around the letters, you would have to turn this into not text, which would just have to turn it into outlines. Okay, which we did at the very beginning, didn't we? Make text into an outline. Let me look at, hold on. This is the part that I need to check on this board. Yeah, so we turned text into outlines here. But we did it only once, so you might have forgotten that, where we did the fill. No. Yeah. Anyway. So, how's it going? And by the way, it's a bit harder to see here with the grid lines turned on, but it helps you. Any questions, anything that you're trying to do that's not working?
Can I still change the font color after warping?
Yes, because it's still a font. So I'm going to go with shell and I'm going to say okay to that. And as long as it's still a font, I mean, even if it were a shape, I could, but yeah, I can still edit it. It's still a font right now. So if I were to want to go, even with this weird shape, I go in my type tool and instead of sample line 4 warping, if I put my mouse over it, see how the text appears over here? And I'm going to say sample line is warping or something like that, I can still edit it. As long as it's still text, I can still work with it as text. Okay. And then when I move away, it's text that shows up this way, but the actual original text is in there. Okay. So try to do that. Go ahead and click on this line and turn it into something much, much nicer, which is, I don't know. Good day to you all. And there we go. So now I am saying something very different. I'm going to turn the grid view off because it's hybrid, because it's hard to show these effects, okay? And they're eminently editable. So if I keep going and opening the warps, I can keep changing to another one. Not, okay. All right. This is different than having the text follow a path, stuff that we haven't done yet. This is truly distorting it. So you got to be careful because, you know, I don't know how readable all this distorted text is, but sometimes some of them are more readable than others. If you have the ones that are not, you know, the ones that are art, well, like they're, you know, there's one that makes it look like a little fish. You've seen that one. That one's used all the time in stickers. Which one is it? Fisheye bloats it. Oh, there's that twist that makes it impossible to read anything. But when you set it kind of to the center, it's not such a big deal. Rise, this one is more readable. Anyway, all right. So you saw those effects, and that's why it's different to see it on something like text or even on a line. If you were just applied it to any one of these simple lines, then that's the best if you want a way to see what the warp really does, you know, because it really does the actual thing to it. But notice that no matter what happens, and this is the part that matters, this shape is not that, it's still a rectangle. And that's the part that's a bit confusing, that you need to remember that if you have used an effect and you're then trying to edit this shape by going to the white arrow tool and making this curve go higher or lower, you can't. It's a rectangle in the end that's just been bulged, right? So you might grab this path and make it higher like that, but you can't really affect the shape that you've made with all of these tools because it's not that shape and it's really just a basic rectangle. Okay, so just keep in mind that not every shape you see. Just like when I tried to grab over here and grab that color and I went, oh, that's a pattern fill. It's not really a color. Some things are not what they truly are or what they seem. All right, so for now, at least grab one, you know, whichever changes that you've made in one of these and give me a little screenshot of that. There's another kind of warp, other kind of things that are a bit more controllable. These are just a warp within those set patterns. Give me a screenshot and post it into the Padlet. The word Padlet was not coming to my brain. I wonder, some of you guys completed your rocket, some of you guys hadn't completed it. I'm not telling you you have to complete your rocket, but I'm saying if you've completed it and you kept working on it, do post them here. And if you haven't, then do consider, you know, you still have some of you are still working on your beach houses. This was a question, Vera, you had mentioned that you couldn't make your minus front tool work. I wanted to address that today. Because you said you wanted to complete the anchor. So over here, you were trying to take this piece off of that to make it like a
That's
like
right.
an iron circle.
Right.
Okay. Do you have the file there that you can share so I can help you with? Because there's like a second little thing here that might be your minus front. Do you have it handy that you can open it?
I don't. I have to look for it. Okay.
Well, and don't forget, and let me just go here, that when you go to File, Open Recent, then it'll show you here in order of the most recent to the less recent. So if you just worked on it a few days ago or whatever, you probably find it somewhere over here. And you don't need to go find it wherever you actually stashed it. So anyway, not that I'm having you open it right now, but just showing you in case you want some help with that minus front tool. I want to make sure you guys can keep working on completing those shapes. Okay. All right. And then let's go back to layers. I'm going to go back to the one that the second one that doesn't have all the effects. So over here, if you want to unfreeze the background for a second, I just wanted to show you that the way these things are done, I'm going to turn these eyeballs off, and these were just straight colored backgrounds, right? Just color. And then on top of that, they got laid with they got filled with these textures. So these are textures that got laid on top of them. Okay. So when it's a different fill. So just to imitate one of these ourselves so that we know how to do this, let's go ahead and head back to our good old box and make a box fill. And mine came out filled with this color because that's the one that I just had. I'm going to choose a different color for it. And go over here to properties and use one of my swatches and just use a yellowish color for it. And then I wanted, you know how earlier today I showed you the paste in place, and we didn't do anything with it. So let's do that. I want to select this exact box, copy, okay, Control C, Command C, or go over here and edit copy. And now, up until now, I've shown you if you just kind of drag out, you get a copy with the Option key and all that. But what if you want a copy that is in the exact same spot of the exact same thing? Well, the easiest thing is to go up here to edit and say paste in place, right? Paste in place. So now I'm going to show you in the layers. It's hard to see because here's one layer, but when I say paste in place, see how I have two exact rectangles, one on top of the other. You can see it in the layers, but here there's no difference. You don't know that there's one on top of the other. Does that make sense? Because you've pasted the exact same thing in the exact same place. Okay, bye, Saul. Thank you. And oh yeah, it's not 11 yet. So now I have that second one, and now I can fill that with a pattern. So I can go down here to my pattern fills. Where did I have my textures or patterns? Where are they? Nope. Patterns, there they go. Graphic dots, for example, and then choose one of these and say, I don't know, this one. And that's, let me make a smaller one actually. Or an even smaller one. I'm gonna go for that one. Anyway. Okay. So that's an example of the patterns that we had there. So did y'all get the whole paste in place thing? It's basically, this is a box filled with that pattern, but I had to make it appear in the exact same spot. Okay. And so a good way to do that is the paste in place. All right, and I'm going to close that out. Let me look at the time. Where's my, oops, where did I leave my phone? Ah, do I not have my phone with me? I guess I don't. Who knows where I left my phone? Let me look at this calendar here because I need to look at the schedule. Yeah. Goodish. Stopping point. What? Oh, one more thing. This, if I want it to not be pure black, I just noticed that these were color. One option would be if I would give it some opacity, and it begins to take on the color of the background, right? So I'm gonna actually give it bigger dots so you can see what I mean. So if this was 100%, it was black. If I bring down the opacity of it, it's going to begin to take on some of that color of the background, which is, I believe, what's happening in these guys. Right?
What if I want them a different color, the dots? Let's say I want a red polka dots.
Yeah, you'd have to create your own patterns, and it's not that complicated to create your symbols and patterns, but these that are
Okay.
kind of pre-made are basically come in black, the ones that come that you
Okay.
can work with. And
Thank
I'm not sure, given the time, that I'll have a chance to truly show you how to create patterns, but it's not that complicated. Well, maybe I'll have a chance to show you. Let me look at the list of things that I want to show you, because I still need to work a lot with you guys with text. And by the way, the next week is our last class, right? So we have today and next week. I know it's a short summer class, many hours, but it's short. So I'm not sure that making patterns falls into the priorities, but then again, different times I choose to teach different things. So maybe I'll show you how to do that. But for now, there's a couple of other fun things, symbols and things that are fun to use. But for now, this is just showing you what happened here. Okay, where all these colors are versions of the original. Yes, I do have my phone here because they're just telling me that it's time to give you guys a break. How funny. It was behind me and I didn't see it. All right, tempted because two people, both Soul and my son, say they have to go by at 11. So I'm tempted to go a little bit more until 11 before I give you guys a break so that they have a chance to do a bit more. Is anyone desperate for a break now, or can we wait a little bit more so that if you need to run, go and come, we can make a bit more. And that way they too can have a bit more class before we take a break. Is that okay, you guys? I'm seeing
That's
some
fine,
thumbs
go
up.
ahead.
Okay, good. Because my son also had said she had an appointment that she needed to leave at 11. So that takes a bit more advantage of the time we have. All right. You're well, I mean, because normally that was my alarm for giving you guys a break. So, but I also don't want to tire people out, right? Like this. So just make sure everyone's okay with it. Okay. Let's head back to our files. There's two important things that I haven't shown you yet. And I'm trying to think. Well, there's two. There's many important things. Illustrator is so big. But I want to work with you guys with the with tracing and with text. So why don't you guys vote which one we tackle right now? Tracing is turning a photograph into a vector graphic, and then text. There's so much to do with text. You know, text is text. So anyone who wants to work with tracing first, give me a green yes, and everyone who wants to work with text, give me a red no. So yes is tracing, no is text. It doesn't mean yes or no, it just means green is tracing, red is text. I'm gonna stop my share for a minute so that you guys okay, I'm seeing not everyone has chosen. Monica, you're not voting yet, although it seems to be that most people are going with tracing.
Deanna, letting you know, I could not find those files because it didn't save them appropriately. I do have a screenshot of my struggles with the beach ball. It's just a screenshot. It's not an AI file. But I was so stumped by a circle that I can't begin to tell you.
Show me, go ahead and share me that beach ball to see what you're talking about. Okay, so it looks like we overwhelmingly want to work more with tracing right now than text. I'm getting like tons of greens and one red. So Linda, sorry, we're going with the tracing right now. So Vera, can you share your screen?
Yes, I'm trying to.
Wait for a second. Okay. So, all right. So here's your ball. And what was it that you were trying to do?
Of course, I didn't appropriately save it. This is a screenshot. I got as far as
got
the
it.
ball. Tried a couple
Okay.
tutorials and really got nowhere, where to go from the circle to the beach ball that had four, that makes it look like a sphere. So there were,
Oh,
Four
okay,
parts
so
to it.
I don't have the original with me right now, so I'd have to go and look at that to see. Okay, so how about we talk about that a bit later? It's
Okay.
10:30. Let's work. I want to try and get a bit of stuff into the next half hour, so I'm going to work with tracings so for the people who need to leave. And then ask me your question again, and we'll pull up the, I tried to ask in the last 15 minutes questions. We'll pull up the original so I can see what you were trying to imitate, and then we'll see how to do it. Or we can ask some of our expert panels who've already done the beach ball, what they did, which was so cool to always see, because there's the way I would do it. And then you guys, some of you just made the beach ball and I didn't teach you how to do it. So what did you do, right? So it'd be good to find out what your workarounds were for it. But yeah, that's good. Okay, so let's head over to our files, and I need to share my screen again, don't I? Here we are. So I'm going to save this and close it for now. And I'll keep my one that I do testings on, and I'll close this one up too. This one I'm not going to save. And so we're back to just our basic thing that we do our little learning effects with. And Min, let's go and say that we want to create, let's just leave this one for just testing things in and out, but let's make a new file new. And yeah, the good old 5x5 custom is fine. We're going to try a few things. So let's just give it a couple more artboards to start with. So I'm going to just start with 4 artboards here. So 5x5 is good, 4 artboards, and say create. Okay. So now let's say file, place, because we're going to bring in an image that's not created in Illustrator. It's a raster image, which would be anything that's a pixel-based layer. So we need to place it in. By the way, I don't have much the capacity in this BDI to do that. But one other way, let me just show, I'm going to open in VDI. This is something we do so much in the Mac all the time, but let me just test if on the PC we can do it too, because I'm curious. If I go to, let me go to my shared drives and my Illustrator drive. If I go to my files in my Finder, or in the PC version of Finder is this Explorer, and I go to my files there, I believe, and this is me testing because you can do it on the Mac, that I'm going to grab this bird here. And it's a JPEG, and I think you can drag it. Can you do that on the PC as well? Yes, you can. Okay, so I just wanted to test that. So you can just drag things in. That's it. It worked. So that's my testing. You could, I just didn't know if the PC would do that too. Now, I dragged a file that I wanted to bring in, which is the bird that ends up in the JPEG. Tell me about this bird. What happened? How many boards did I have? What happened to this photo when I dragged it in? Let me.
It's way too big.
Yeah, it's humongous. It's just a file and it's humongous. In fact, I made 4 artboards and it's way even bigger than these 4 artboards. So when you do this to a file, so hopefully you all did that, you dragged it in. And if you didn't, just watch this little bit, because as you can see, it's not necessarily that useful. I would have to, I'm going to do control. I'm going to go and do control minus a few times. And that's how big that bird is in comparison to these. And these were 5x5 artboards. So this is basically 10 by 10-ish square. So this file is humongous. So how do we control the size and shape in which something comes in? When you drag it in like this, it comes in at its biggest, most native so to say, it expands to its to what it's been created as. Now I'm stumbling on my words because I'm trying not to give away. One thing that we need to do here is notice that when I did this up here at the top, it tells me that it's a linked file. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. But what I need to find is my links panel to understand better what happened to this bird. So I'm going to go over here to Window and pull up the links panel. So go to Window and Links. And for those of you interested in a lot of this, I do much more in-depth conversation about all of this in the digital design techniques class, which, by the way, has been set up for the fall. Now that I have it, I should send an email out to people to sign in. I need to send, I have so much to do in the next 3 days that I don't know how I'm going to do it. I'm getting a little bit, but let me make myself a note or I will forget. But I need to check on the schedule that she put for the digital design techniques. So I'm making myself a note. I requested a schedule and I don't know if I had. So I'm doing Illustrator, Photoshop, and the design techniques in the fall. Anyway, I had to make myself that note, but I'll deal a lot more with this kind of conversation of how to handle files from one program to the other, to print and stuff like that. But here in the links panel, and again, see, this is a floater panel, but we're going to be referring to it a lot. So what I'd like us to do, instead of having it be a floater panel, is just to drag it in here and attach it. Now, I don't really need the actions panel at all. I only need the links panel. So maybe I can just grab the links one and drag over like this. And then when you see this blue line that goes all the way down, drop it. You can get rid of then of this little actions panel. And then here I have my links panel, which if I click on this little double-headed arrow, it'll collapse into something small and it'll open to when I need it. And that's kind of the best way. Or you can just grab this links panel and drag it over here and have it be part of the layer. You know, you can just choose where you want things to be. And so now I have it next to the links and to the layers and stuff like that. I'm going to put it on the side like that and collapse it so that it goes parallel to my others. So I'm just showing you how things are movable. So how am I moving things? Just by grabbing them from the little name of it. And in this case, you know, you drag that name in here and drop it in there and you move it around. Okay. So I'm going to, as I said before, leave it here on the side and collapse it when I don't need it, but I'm going to expand it right now. And there's only one link. So the information is way down there. That's the part that I don't like about it. I wish it were stashed in a bit more. Which when I had it separate, so I'm going to take it out. It was a bit smaller. Yeah, I didn't have a lot of extra space. It's trying to fill that whole place. So I don't like that. So anyway, see how when I put it in here, since I don't have any other panels, before I had more panels, so they all take their own space. But since I don't have any other panels, it's trying to occupy the entire thing and my info is down there, which is bugging me. So it's occupying more space than I wanted. So I'm going to take it out again, actually. I'm going to grab it here and just drag it out and it becomes smaller. And I'm just going to kind of hover it over here just because I want to be able to show it to you better. So there you go. After all that showing you, that's what you do with this stuff. You move it around until it fits your needs, right? Anyway, for this need of teaching you this, it's better to have it here. All right, so here's my file. Bird 782 whatever .jpg. That's the file that I brought in. This information that I've in here is metadata for this file. Now, the first thing that I need to consider is this. What am I going to do? Why did I bring this bird in here, right? And if I brought it in because I want to turn it into a vector file, ultimately the vector file is going to be scalable, right? It's going to be something that I can turn into any size that I want once it's an illustration. Yeah. So yeah, I know, Linda, you asked me and you wrote me an email. I've been so busy. Sorry, let me answer to Linda's asked me a question in a direct message so you guys don't see it. She's asking about whether the classes will be online. And yes, all the Adobe classes in the fall, I'm going to be teaching them online. Okay. So yay. You mentioned, I wanted you to tell me when you say all the places I look, it looks different. I want to send that email forward.
That was me actually who sent it to you.
Oh, Monica,
Yeah,
because Linda had been excited that they were online, but Monica, yeah. You need to tell me where you looked because I want to send them that because
Yeah.
it's weird that there's info, but the correct result is that they're online, but I don't know where
You
else
mean
you're
I have to
seeing the
go
difference.
back on that web page and find
No,
my
you
way
don't.
around?
You don't. I'll go around and find out. But it was so on the web page, you found it in 3 formats, is what you mean? I thought maybe you meant in a
Yes.
catalog.
No. It's all on the web page, but depending on where you click, you get one info on the spreadsheet. It says one thing, on the sign up it says another. The next place where you have to go to register, it's I
Wow.
spent
Okay,
some
that's good to know.
lifetime quality there.
I'm
Oh.
so sorry. It's so hard. Okay, so I'll
That's
tell
the
her.
feedback you can give them.
Thank
Make
you.
it easier.
That's good to know. Sorry, guys. She had told me that she couldn't, that in 3 different places, one it said it was in person, then I said it was somewhere else, and I said it was online. And yeah, they're online. Okay. So if you have taken my Photoshop classes, if you understand resolution, if you're in the middle of learning about all of that, one thing that matters here is this PPI 72. So this thing came out humongous, right? It looks humongous because it's at 72 PPI, meaning if I were to want to print this, this would look icky and fuzzy. It shouldn't be at 72. It should say 300, in which case it would show up much smaller. Now, Illustrator doesn't know any about that. It doesn't care. It just brings it in as its base size that it's been set at in Photoshop or from the camera. What matters is that what we need is a file that's good enough quality in Illustrator that if we're going to print this file as is from Illustrator, it's going to be an actual rasterized bird. We do care. This should be 300. We need to fix this in Photoshop. That's important. But if as long as we're going to do is just trace it and turning it in illustration, it doesn't matter what PPI it is or isn't, because once it's an illustration, it'll be scalable. And again, scalable means I can make it as big or as small as I want and it won't change quality. Versus if you do this in Photoshop, this bird will change quality. Okay, so that's just information that if you haven't taken Photoshop and you have no idea what I'm talking about, then kind of ignore that a little bit. Just know that it's important that if you turn this into illustration, don't worry. But if you don't turn it into illustration and you're going to use this bird as part of the label you're making for your bluebird jam, ooh, that sounds horrible, for your blueberry jam, then you do need to make sure that this is a prepared file from Photoshop in the right PPI. But keep an eye on what's happening here on this number and these numbers, and watch what's going to happen if I grab the corner of this image. So just keep your eye on that. I'm going to make this bird smaller, and I want it to do proportionally. So I'm going to hold down my shift key. I'm going to grab a corner, and I'm going to make this bird smaller now. And then look what happened to the PPI over here. See? And I'm going to drag this in a little bit. So it does change, and it is becoming more reasonable. And then it needs to be at least 250, if not 300. So I'm going to grab it and keep making it smaller. And that went up to 362. So if I move it, make it a little bit bigger again, 323, bigger, we're getting to about 300. So that's about the size it should be for it to print well as a photo. Suddenly that's much more handleable. If this file was 5 inches big, each one of these artboards is 5 inches big, then this is probably a 6 or 7 inch file. Does that make sense? So I'm gonna undo that again to have you guys do that with me. So I came in at whatever it's been set right now in Photoshop, but I can change this proportion by grabbing the corner, holding the shift key, because if I don't hold shift key, then I'm going to distort the bird, see, and then it's going to be impossible. So you need to hold the shift key and then try to make it smaller and keep an eye on that number. If this is going to be a bird that matters to you to keep as a photo, that number is important. You're going to keep going until you see it around the 300 number. Okay, so how's it going? You got it down to something 300-ish. You can't change it per se, You have to, like, you can't go in here and type 300 or whatever. You just need to keep moving this until you get near to your number. So the smaller I make it, the taller, the bigger it gets. Now, again, in the end, as long as we are going to trace it, it doesn't matter. We just need to make it handleable. Okay, so I can make it about yay size. And now I can zoom in. So Control plus, 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 plus. And here's a photo that I'm wanting to trace. Now, I'm really going to want only the bird. I don't want the whole photo. So I could, instead of having to trace the whole thing, which takes quite a bit of energy for the computer to do that, I could go ahead and crop it a little bit. Let me move this out of the way for a second. Before I go to cropping, I just noticed that I didn't explain completely what being linked means. This file, when it's linked, so this linked is a linked file, it means that it doesn't really belong to this file yet. It's connected to this file, but it's its own individual file. And the Illustrator has a link where it knows where it's located. Over here, it says it's in the G shared file, but it's showing you what's in that file. It's not yet really embedded in this file as its own thing. So if I were to open Photoshop right now and make this blue bird turn into a red bird, here in Illustrator, the bird would suddenly show up as red. Okay, because this truly is showing us that file, the one that is sitting in the computer somewhere with a blue looking bird on it. If I were to embed it, then it would become my own bird. And no matter what I do to that file, this would still be this little blue bird. Does that make sense? Like it stops being that file. Now, the reason that matters is because if I want to go ahead and get rid of some of this stuff over here, I don't really need to, but just for the fact that I want to get rid of the stuff that's not going to be traced, then, and I'm going to move this out of the way, I'm going to go over here to the properties panel. We're going to move this over here because we don't need it for now. And I'm going to go to the properties panel, and over here it gives me the choice to crop this image. But notice when I hover over it, it says crop the embedded image. If I'm going to crop it, I'm actually going to embed it. It's going to become my own image because I can't from here crop this image and have it affect that original file. It's not going to do that. Okay. So the moment I choose to crop it, this becomes a separate file from the one that's out there in the world. And if I then later change that out where in the world to be red, this one will still be blue. They become two separate things. Depends on your need for it, whether you want it to be embedded or not. In this case, I want to crop it. So when I click crop, it lets me know cropping a linked file embeds a copy of the original. The original file location is not affected at all. Okay, so that's important for you to know. All right, I'll say, okay, thank you. I know that. And now I can crop, and here it's giving me the choice to zoom in or out. And I'm going to get closer to the bird because I really don't care about anything else. So I'll make sure not to lose its tail. And I'm going to move these, and then I can make it a bit shorter because, again, I'm not going to care about what it's sitting on. We'll probably have to figure out what to do with the little legs because they won't look like they're on anything. Maybe I'll give it a little resting point. And that's about what I want to trace. So now when I hit apply or hit return, that there is my new bird. Now this file, if I look at the links again, it doesn't give me the information it gave me before. Now it's an embedded file. See how it's not telling me the address of where it goes and all that. Now this is part of this document. All right. And that just happened because I cropped it. So it just couldn't, you can't affect the raster image in Illustrator. If it's linked, that needs to be handled in Photoshop. Okay, did that work for everyone? We all did a little crop. Okay. And at this point, the PPI is telling me it's around 300. It doesn't matter. Once I trace it, I'm going to be able to make it as big or as small as I want. but it's good to have a high quality image to trace, because then that's the more detail that the image, the trace will have, right? So it's good to have it at that high quality. I didn't point out before, but the dimensions in pixels hadn't changed when I moved the PPI. The file looked like it was humongous and it became tiny, but the pixel dimensions, is what matters, were the same. But now that I cropped the sides, I did change the pixel dimensions. I actually have lost a bunch of stuff that I didn't need anyway. So good. So now I am going to, I don't need this anymore. You basically, I'm going to close this linked file, this linked palette, the linked window, and just deal with my little birdie photo. Okay, so what time is it? Almost time. So we're going to just do a little trace of this thing. I'm going to head over, and there's so many places to pick it up from, of course, but as long as you have nothing selected, no choices here for selecting up here, for tracing up here. The moment you have it selected, anything you can do with image appears. And one of the things you can do is you could trace. So it's that little image trace right there. So I'm going to click on the image trace, and it asks me, well, what kind of trace do you want to do? And for now, let's go ahead and say that we want to make this be a high fidelity photo. I'm actually going to zoom in a little bit more before I do the trace so that we can see better what's happening. And then I'm going to go to the image trace, and I'm going to say, I'm going to make it be a high fidelity photo. I'm going to click on that, and it's going to start to think. It takes a while. This is a high, it had a lot of pixels, which is why I wanted to trace it so that it would have less stuff around it. And at first glance, we got 100%. So I'm at if I actually look at it 100%, which is the way it would be looked at normally, it doesn't even look like anything happened to this bird. But this thing told me that it traced it. If I zoom in, plus, 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 I can begin to see that it's not a photo anymore, that it is lots of little layers of colors shaped to imitate my photo. Pretty amazing, isn't it? I love how it's good at details. But look, I'm zoomed into 800%. You don't have eyeballs that zoom things in when you look at them. You see them, your eyeballs in real life. Look at this thing at 100%. So I have to zoom in this much to even see that. And if I go to Control or Command 1, which is 100%, that's how it looks. It pretty much still looks like a photo. So it's amazing what Illustrator does with a trace. This is what I'll be seeing with this image, even if what I know happened intimately by zooming into 2400% is that each one of these little bits and pieces is now overlapping little bits of different colors. Very cool. I'm going to go ahead and say Control or Command 0 to fill my screen again. I'm not done with a trace. If I'm done, I have to do one more thing, which is to hit expand, but I'm not going to hit expand because I want to test what it would be like to trace this in a couple of different versions. So what if I trace this and say, make it a 3-color trace? And so now it's going to rethink the whole thing and turn this whole image into 3 colors, which I guess wasn't much or enough to give much detail. But it's already beginning to turn it into something which we recognize as more graphic. Maybe let's try it with 6 colors. See what it'll do. So those are all presets that are set. So over here it's called a preset. So it's different choices. Imagine that I like this version of it. I don't have to stick with these colors. Later I can, once it's a vector file, I can go to recolor image and make this be blue, everything that's this white be red, this be yellow. I mean, I can change all these colors, right? The important thing is how it's separating and giving me more or less detail on the bird. So what if I don't want to go with just their presets? Then I have more tools over here that I can handle. But let me go and try a couple more of the presets. I'm going to try the 16 colors. And then after that, we're going to open the more detailed panel. So each time the bird still looks cool. What seems to be changing a lot is my background, right? Because the background was that thing that, if you remember the photograph, had a ton of tones, right? It was a very, very complicated set of tones. And so what it does is it simplifies into this thing that's called banding. Now, since I only wanted the bird, I can care less about what happens out there, because in the end, I'm going to delete it. So it's easier for me if it isn't realistic, because now I can just grab everything that's this color, hit delete, everything that's this color, hit delete, and then I'm left with just the bird, right? Versus when I have the high fidelity one with all the colors, I'm going to have a harder time separating the bird from its background. So, the better choice might have been originally to, in Photoshop, have masked out this bird from its background and then just brought the bird in, right, to just trace. But let's say that you don't know how to do that. Then here at this level, at the high fidelity one, it's going to be harder when I have to go in and select everything that's not bird, because there's tons, and let me zoom in again. There's tons and tons of background bits and pieces all around him. See what I mean? You're going to have to select every one of these little bits and pieces that's making that background. But if you really wanted a realistic bird, then you have two choices. You can copy this twice, right? And you can first make a high fidelity vector. And with the exact same size and file, make a low, like 2-color or 3-color one, where then we can easily delete the background from it. And then we can use that as a mask to delete all of these other colors from the vectors later. Anyway, what if we want to do a shades of gray, it'll just look black and white. If we want to do a black and white logo, it'll turn the whole thing into either black or white. So in this case, it's a little bit harder because the choices, what if I want to make my own choices about this? So let's make choices this time. So let's go over here to this little choice over here, which opens my whole image trace panel. Another way is to just go to window and go to image trace. But since we all remember it as trace, sometimes you might forget that you need to find it in the eye. People might go over here to trace to look for the image trace there. And it's the whole name of this tool is image trace. Okay, so now I'm going to move this guy over. And again, I'm not stuck yet with any of these choices. I haven't expanded. When I'm expanding, that's when I'm kind of stuck with a choice. So now over here, the presets that I used before are just these presets, black and white logo, default, technical line, that kind of thing. But now I can choose more details. And one of the things that's interesting is when you choose black and white is the threshold point. The threshold is the point where Illustrator chooses what to turn white and to what to turn black. So it reads the whole thing as if it were grayscale, and it decides that anything that is lighter than a certain number becomes black, and something that is darker than a certain number becomes white. So the number here is 127. So the grayscale, there's 255 tones of gray in a grayscale. And so at anything that's darker than that will turn one thing on. So I'm going to go ahead and say 67. So I'm making it quite a bit less. And now many more of the levels were made white. If I instead go over and somewhere in the middle over here and say 198, I'm going to have much more black, right? So you control how this image is going to look by what point you're setting it, the threshold as, to see your bird at the best of its ability, so to say. Okay. And when you think the bird looks its best and it has the most definition that you can without losing too much of it, that might be the time or the spot where you then stop and say, well, maybe he's a bit too fluffy now. Maybe I'll go back or I'll go forward or whatever. And so then that's your bird. And then later you can fill in the other parts that need it or not. But that would be a way to modify this preset. And see how now it doesn't say preset, it says custom anymore, because now I'm modifying that preset. Okay. One last thing. You can also open this little advanced choice there, and then you can choose if the paths have to be more faithful or less faithful to the shape, or if the corners have to be more or less faithful to the shape, or if you want to get more or less tiny details in the picture. So in a thing like feathers, I would want the tiny pixels maybe, so you might want to have more or less noise. So if I make this much higher, I'm going to have less detail. If I make it lower, I'm going to have more detail. So I might want to lower it for feathers because I do want the details. And so look at the difference between what I had before and now. Doesn't that look much more feathery? It was somewhere over here originally, and it was like big blocks. And now that I move it over there, I'm getting like feathery looking things. Now, by the way, if this is going to be a logo, little detail is not good for a logo, right? So I don't want this. But if I wanted this to be a black and white illustration of the bird, then maybe I do want the noise. So see how, depending on what your use is for the trace that you're making, you would choose what to do or not do with these things. So if I make this the corners higher, then I might get even more fidelity. There you go. I have a little bit more fidelity. And if I'm willing to have more paths, it might look even more faithful to the original bird. And then look at that. It's black and white, but I'm pretty much seeing the feathers almost drawn out. Pretty cool, isn't it? Versus what we got at the beginning. But the setting was for black and white logo, not for black and white drawing. So if I go back to black and white logo, it made sense that it tried to simplify things, because that's what a logo would be, right? But you get to modify based on your needs. If instead we go to sketched art, then it's going to probably try to be more faithful to the choices. Doesn't seem to be changing it much. Okay. As technical drawing and line art are a whole different creature. It turns it into lines and stuff, and that really would not work for us at all. The one that we didn't try yet was Shades of Gray, which is really just keeping it as if it were as high fidelity as possible, but turning it all into shades of gray. And I want to show you only this because this is what it uses to decide that threshold point, right? So if you turn this into shades of gray, and that threshold that it used for black and white, it reads the Illustrator reads the image as if it were black and white, and it decides that anything that's darker than a certain tone of gray is what it turned black, and lighter than a certain tone of gray is what it turned white. Okay, which is why the belly turned white, but also all these other light tones of gray turned white, and then these turned gray, and most of these turned gray except for the lighter bits. The lighter bits were left as white, right? So that's the way the illustrator decided to look at the bird in order to tweak and decide which goes black and which goes white. Okay, so once you've chosen, and I'm going to go ahead and turn it back into maybe a 16 color bird. And now we're going to expand it and turn it into a vector file. So I'm going to end up with 16 colored bird. And then here again, you can decide if you want more or less fidelity. And I want the bird to have a bit more fidelity. Let me go ahead and try to increase the paths number. I want the feathers to look a little bit more feathery. Let's see what it does in 16 colors because it's limited. It changed a bit, but not too much. If I give it less noise protection. So each change, it reads it again. So when you have a huge file, you might want to turn off the preview, right? So that you make many changes at the same time. So there you go. Now I got more feathery. So say that I want to make 2 or 3 more changes without it reading it each time. I turn off this preview right there, turn it off. And then I change a few things more. I change that, I change this, I change whatever it is I'm going to change. And then I go here and I say trace, and then it performs the trace. But then I don't get to see the effect of each one of these. So once you know a bit more or less what you want, you might be able to. So I think I turned it into 19 colors now or something like that, which I don't like that effect. So I'm going to go back because I don't like that green that it brought in here. I'm going to go back to 16 colors and do that final trace. You guys set it at whatever your final trace is. Okay. And now we're going to say, okay, this is what I like, even if it's not, but we're going to. And we're going to say expand, because now that's the ending. This is really what turns it into paths and lines. And now I can close this little window because I don't need it anymore. And now I have art that is truly not a photo anymore. And in this case, it's all grouped. So if I go to layers, you'll see that I have one group. If you open that group, it's ridiculous amounts of little bits and pieces make up this bird. Okay, like you'll never be able to figure it out. But it's all grouped right now. So if I want to get rid of any of these pieces, and then we're going to take a break. But if I wanted to rid the background of these pieces, what I would have to do is ungroup him and then delete these things, but then I might venture to move something out of the way and the bird will be messed up. Or remember the isolation mode? I can double click, double click, double click. And then I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to get rid of that. Delete. Then double click, double click, double click, double click. And I'm going to get rid of that. Delete. And so on and so forth. See, I'm just going in there and I'm choosing. In 16 colors, it's more than I would have liked, but it's not as bad as had I used it in high fidelity. This would have been almost impossible, but this has enough that if I go all the way around it, I can probably do this. Now, I can also use the magic wand to choose a specific color. You know, I had shows you that before. Anyway, so I'm gonna click my way around this. If I really am good and know that I'm not going to mess things around, I can just ungroup things for a little bit. This is plan B, ungroup them to start with. And then I can just click and delete, click and delete. You know, it's much faster. And I can select kind of this whole area. Make sure I don't touch anything that's important and hit delete, and I get rid of them. And when I'm going to approach later to get near the bird, because if not, I might mess things up. But now I can select all that and delete all of that at the same time, you know, so I can just do that better, but be careful to not move anything, even 1 iota, because if you do, then you're messing up the bird. So now here, that was a bit hard. See, I tried to get rid of that, but the bird didn't get a very well-defined back leg. So when I do that, that back leg kind of got deleted. So I might have to modify that with my hands. Oh, look over here. And all my happy deleting, the bottom of the bird disappeared. So I'm going to have to do Control Z, Control Z, Control Z, and be more detailed. That's when the bottom of the bird hadn't been defined. Okay, so I'm going to have to draw a line here and try to do that myself, or maybe I have to go and retrace it in a way that works a little bit better. Or of course I can leave the background. But anyway, I'd say that the original, that doing, and when I'm done, I'd select everything again and group it again to make sure that all the little bits and pieces don't move away, right? So I'm not done right now, but there you go. Now I'm going to move it as a bird. Because what you don't want, and I'm going to zoom in, let me ungroup it again. Object, ungroup. What you don't want is to suddenly pick up a piece like that and drag it out, because it truly does leave a hole. The space, they don't overlap. It's like not you uncover another layer of birds. You really do leave holes. And over here in my original from afar, I seem to have lost the beginning of this beak. So you have to be a bit more careful because these colors weren't precisely around the edge and stuff like that. So anyway, since I don't like what's happening to the edges of the bird, if this would be what's truly happening, if I truly wanted this bird, I would probably go first into Photoshop, eliminate that background, get my shape of my bird, and then trace it. So then I don't have to do this weird, edging out of it. But anyway, you get the point of, let me undo a few more times so I can bring back that little piece that I took out from the middle. And there you go. So that's one way of working with tracing. I'm gonna stop. Both Mason and Saul had to leave, so it's a good time to take our break. Go ahead and save as first. Do a file save as. I think I stopped my share already, but you know how to do a file save as, and go and actually, Vera, do you want to share your screen and I'll help you do your saving, since what you said is that you messed up a bit on the I'm saving my file, so I couldn't do two things at the same time. Since you said that you kind of didn't know how to save the other ones and you might have lost them, do you want to just share and save with me, and I'll kind of guide you into saving so that you can learn how to do that? Or not? Oh, no. I'm not sure she hears. She probably has someone coming in. Oh, there we go. I can't hear you, Vera. I just see you moving around. Do you want to give it a try?
I only had, I know how to save. I just didn't do it.
Oh, okay,
That's
got it.
the issue. I just didn't do it. All I have left of that beach house that I started was a screenshot of where I started the beach ball.
Got it, got it.
That's all.
Okay, all right then. So let's go ahead and take that break. It's 11:10 a.m. So let's do a break until 11:25 a.m. Okay. See you guys in 15 minutes. All right, I'm back. Cold, I need to put my sweater on again. Come on back. We have another hour to go. Oh. Okay. It's not just chilly, typical Monday. It's actually cold. Or is it maybe just me? I did just get a bit wet and I got my t-shirt wet, so maybe I'm colder. I got my t-shirt wet. All right. Okay, so I'm gonna command and control minus again. Whoops, I need to first share my screen. Here we go. So let's go ahead and we're gonna try a couple of different options of scanning. I have here a pencil sketch, it's called, which is a turtle. So let's go see what happens when you sketch something out and want to trace it in Illustrator. So let's go and say File, Place again. And no, not there. Google Drive, shared drives, Illustrator, download. All right, so pencil sketch under the P. Here we go, pencil sketch. If we were doing this with Bridge, we would already know through the metadata in Bridge a lot of what size it is, what size it isn't. But in this case, since we're just placing this way, we have less information about it, which is why I like Bridge, but we'll find out through that links palette when we get in there. So let's go ahead and say place. Now, this time, last time I dragged it in. This time I'm saying place. So when you place something, you have two ways of placing it. One way, I'm going to just simply click. Boink, click. This is equivalent as what we did with the bird. It comes into the biggest of its possible size. The bird came in huge, remember? This is the equivalent of huge for the turtle. Let's go ahead and do Control Z to undo that and then place that again. And let me scroll down again to pencil sketch. One more under, there it is, pencil sketch. So we place it in again. And this time we're going to click and drag our mouse and let go. And then we place that to the size that we actually want it placed. Maybe we wanted a small version of that turtle or not, but we could have done that to the bird as well. Now, I'm going to open again those links that I closed. View links. And I'm going to, instead of deleting and starting again, I'm going to file place one more time. But now I'm going to make a two placements of the same file. Pencil sketch. And I'm going to do the whole just click and let go. And this is what comes up. And this is the small one that I clicked and dragged to fit into something. Okay. I'm going to drag over here so we can, so here's the one that I clicked and dragged, and this is the one that I just dropped. Now, in this case, the one that I just dropped was already set up as a 300 ppi file, because when I select it, see, it already says 300 ppi. So the one that I made tiny, the ppi is humongous. Now it's 1100 pixels per inch. Again, I'm not going to teach an Illustrator really a lot about resolution. I'm just going to tell you anything above 300 is good. So clearly, even though it's tiny, since it's above 300, life is good. You can use that. But say that you had
a little tiny sketch and you had only 100 PPI in here, the tracing effect will still work. The tool will still work. You will still get a design of it. All you're going to have is that when the image comes in at less resolution, the trace might have less detail, less exactness. So if it had done the feathers in the bird, it might do just a bit less of a good job undoing the feathers. It's not a big deal as long as you're not going to use this to print. As long as you're going to use it to trace, it can be under 300. But at 300, you'll have more, you'll have a better result, so to say. Okay, so once again, this one has stayed linked. We're not going to unlink it. We're not going to crop it like we did with the bird. We're going to leave it linked. I'm going to go ahead and delete the big one. I just wanted to show you the difference between the big one and the small one. The only difference is the amount, the dimensions, the amount of pixels, 2348 by 15676 doesn't change, no matter if this one's big or small. Okay, it's still the same dimensions, right? Which is weird because you're clearly seeing it's not the same dimensions, but as far as the file is concerned, the file that we linked in, it's still the same file here or there. It's the exact same file. It's one file that's linked in twice into our computer, into our document. We've linked it 2 times, but it's coming from the one same place because it's linked and it's not separate. It's exactly the same thing, just showing up smaller. Okay. When you make it smaller, what virtually happens is that the PPI gets compressed, we have more pixels per inch in order to make it smaller. That's all, but it's the same one. So let's go delete the big one now. So we'll only have one version of the file. And now, again, if I want to stretch it out, remember to not just stretch it out any which way or you'll distort it, or even not to stretch it from the middle or the top because you'll distort it. Just to not distort it, grab it from the corner, hold down shift and make it a bit bigger or smaller, just to fill the page a little bit. Now we can twirl it just like we could with any document. You know, you can do whatever you want with it, but you just want to keep it proportional to keep it so. So now this file is an example of having, let me go closer up now. This is an example of something that somebody drew on a piece of paper, a napkin, a beautiful watercolor sheet, wherever it did. And it's going to have the texture of the paper because this was scanned in or photographed in. So the fact that it's already pure white and pure black would be that this was already pre-processed in Photoshop to make the background disappear. Otherwise, it wouldn't be this way. So let me go here. I have another example. We're not going to open that I usually, which is this one, the half butterfly. This is more realistic of something that was drawn on a piece of paper. And then when you scan it in, you're going to have that paper. You can tell that that was the paper it was drawn on. Does that make sense? So if you were to scan in something you drew, you're going to have something to get rid of. And you can either get rid of it as we kind of did with the bird after the fact, or this turtle was put inside of Photoshop and already all the background was dropped to white and the turtle was made black. So we're only seeing, if you approach even closer, you can see that you're just seeing the traces of the pencil or the marker, you know, those lines are still there, but we don't see anything at all for paper. Okay. So this was handled ahead of time. All right. So now we're done. We're going to keep it as a link this time. So let's close the link panel. I don't need it anymore. Let's head over to properties and let's make a little trace of this guy. Now, I'm going to head over to, remember, it has to be selected. I can't trace it without it being selected. Selected and then hit image trace. Now, consider that in this case, it does matter if we choose shades of gray, black and white, sketch start. These make a difference. Sketch start and shades of gray are going to give me something more realistic, right? It's going to show me a little bit all that degree of shading. But again, that's not something that we're going to want if this is supposed to be a turtle. Now it's going to be an outline of something that later I'm going to fill with colors. Then yeah, it's fine to have it be just black and white. So it depends. So I'm going to go ahead, and it doesn't matter which we choose because we'll just adapt it to our needs with the higher levels. Vera, I see your hand is up. Sorry, I just noticed it. I don't know how long it's
Yeah,
been
I have an additional rectangle that I don't know what I did that I need to get rid of, and I don't know how.
It's not selectable to just hit
No,
delete.
it doesn't seem to be selectable.
All right, can you share your screen so I can see what's happening?
You see here?
That almost looks like an additional artboard that somehow happened there. So go to your artboard tool and see if you can select. And I'm saying it because it goes over the others and it has a white background, right? So go to your artboard tool, click on the artboard tool. Yep, just click on it. And yeah, there it is. See, it's another artboard. So now just select it. No, with the artboard tool. You have to be in the artboard tool to select it. So go back to the artboard tool.
Delete.
Yeah, and now
Oh,
go delete. Yep,
All right.
perfect.
Okay, thank
And
you.
now go back to the regular move tool in the artboard, because if not, see, I think you've created another little artboard there. You clicked, and way on the far right, I think you made
Over here?
another little one. Yeah, so click on your artboard tool again. Yeah, you made another little one over there. There you go. Now you deleted it. Okay. And now
Okay.
just move out into the move tool so that, because that artboard tool is dangerous. The moment you have it in your hand and you click, you make a little box. It's another artboard, even though it's 2
Okay.
pixels wide.
All right, thank you.
Okay. No, you're welcome. Thanks for sharing that. Sometimes I cannot understand until I see. All right. Cool. So now we're going to go to one of the black and white modes. Let's hit sketch start, since this is sketch start to start with. And let's see. Okay, so this is okay, so this message is interesting because it says tracing may proceed slowly with this large image. So in what way is this image larger than the bird? The bird didn't say that to us, even though it came in humongous. Remember that? Let me just, before I continue, let me show you a little bit what it's talking about. Because remember that bird came in humongous and it never said that it was too big. Let me open the links so that you can see what I'm talking about. It's just to understand a bit more what this whole conversation is. It's the total of the pixels that matter. So when I click on this guy, oh, he's not real anymore. So he's not going to give me its pixel dimensions. Let me go bring in for a second. Let me place that bird again. I'm going to do a place, but I'm going to make him tiny right there. So this bird here, right? We never had issues with the computer telling me it was too big. But if you click on it, the total size of it, never mind how big or small you see it here, what total size of it that matters is the dimensions in pixels. So the dimensions in pixels of this image was 1920 by 1080. So basically 2000 by 1000-ish pixels.
Is anybody else not seeing the screen share? Or is it just me?
Are you all seeing me?
I can see it.
You can see it? I might need
I can
to.
see it.
Everyone's
Okay,
saying
I might-
yes, so not sure what's happening, Linda, sorry.
I probably need to sign back in, so I'll
Sorry,
do
Nat.
that.
Yeah, I think that happened yesterday, right? So
Yeah, happens.
she had that happen in Photoshop too, suddenly she couldn't see anything. Okay. So the original dimensions of this file, again, there where it's sitting on the G drive, shared class, whatever, has Linda in again. Here we go. Is all right, you're looking like a blurry kind of there you go. By the way, the art that she shows there always, that's her art. She does that. So I was very impressed by that. But now it's kind of fading in and out. It's doing a weird, like it's showing or not showing, like a blurry, it's like a video. You might want to turn that off a bit because that might be affecting your, and do you hear me, Linda, or not? I'm talking to you. I can't tell if you might not be hearing me. There's a weird little flicker of that painting that you usually have in the background. Like it's not resolving itself. So, and you're not answering, so you might not be hearing me. So yeah, I don't know. There you go. The painting is there now. Okay, so back to over here. My explaining the difference between the two images is that this one in dimension, in original pixel dimensions, is much bigger. It's got an extra 1,000 well, not much bigger. It's 2,000 by 1,000, and this one's 2,000 by 1,500. But this one we had cropped. Okay, so we had taken pieces off. So by the time we were done, I'm going to do that again. We ended up with something more like yay big or so. I can't crop in tiny. It's not letting me crop when it's so tiny, only moving it. But anyway, it's giving me an idea of cropping. So we had ended up with something that had much less pixels total than this one. And at that point, you don't get that warning or that message. Anyway, so it wasn't about how big it was, because even if this is humongous looking, all that changes here is the PPI. But the amount of pixels doesn't change. And so it's the amount of original pixels that it was complaining about when I tried to trace it. Okay, I'm going to get rid of the bird. Continue with this. Just wanted to show you what it means by something being bigger than other. It's not the physical dimensions. It's the file size. Okay, because it has to deal with that whole file to trace it with those pixels. So that's what it's talking about. Okay, so back to image trace. When I said sketch start, it gave me this warning. Now, remember what I just said, that if you have a bigger file, more details, you'll get a better result. So if you have the wherewithal and your computer doesn't block itself, and you can use this big file, please use this big file. You'll get a better trace ultimately. But if your computer is bogging down and each time it does a preview, it takes 5 minutes, then go reduce the file size in Photoshop and bring it in again as a smaller file. So I'm going to say okay to that, or you can rasterize it in Illustrator, but it doesn't do such a good job. So if you guys know Photoshop, you should always do it there first. All right, so this is what I got. Okay, and it definitely looks much less detailed than what I had originally, right? The original sketched art trace, I'm not too happy with. So I definitely need my big box with all my details, and I needs to start testing. So if I want to see the before and after right now, if I hit the preview and turn it off, I can move things around without it tracing each time, but then it's hard to see the changes. So as long as your computer can handle it, leave the preview on. And I think one of the first things we need to shift here is the threshold. So if you move to the left, try some in between beginning and the end, and it redoes it. I moved it the wrong way, sorry. I need to move it to the right, move it over to the right. And now it's picking up a lot more of what it had lost. Still, and it's only leaving it in black and white, not shades of gray, but that's what we're going to want to fill it in later. Vera, I'm noticing your hand is up, and I don't know if it's the same hand as before, or did I ignore a request for help? I can't hear you.
It's a hand from before, but I don't have that image trace box.
Okay, let me have you go up to when you first do the initial trace, then you go over here to the right and click on this little icon that opens the image trace panel. Is that the one you mean? Like this box is what you're talking about?
The box you have up, yeah, but I don't have that.
But are you talking about the panel or the bounding box from the turtle?
The panel.
Okay, got it. Okay, so if you don't see over here, you have to create your first trace for it to work, or go up to window and pull it up from image trace. That's the other place you pull it up from.
Okay, all right, that was easier. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so now by moving my threshold up, I got more detail than I had at the beginning, and my lines are closing, and not all of them, but they kind of are, but maybe the original trace wasn't closing. But maybe I want to get, again, less detail,
or more detail, I would move this noise, right? So if I want to have more of the noise appear, more of the little dots and spots to have it look more like a sketch, I will move it down. And then I have all these little dots appeared now that had been missing. See the little dots? Now, does that help me or not? Do I want all these little dots? No, maybe not. I'm going to go ahead and Control plus so we can see the details a bit more when I'm talking about the dots. So is that going to help me in the end to color this turtle to have all these little dots? Maybe, maybe not. Is a little more realistic. Do I want to make it look like just a computer piece of art? Yeah, so how about I try to make it not like a sketch art, but how about I try to turn this into something more computerish, more straight line? Okay, well, the first thing I need to do is reduce the noise. So in this case, I'm going to move it all the way to the top. I want to reduce noise to the max. And now the lines are cleaner. Another thing I can do is I can say I want less paths. So I'm going to move it down and make less paths. And so see how the lines become more simplified, become less like a sketch, be more like just lines made by the computer. Bring less corners, in fact. And each time I keep looking and it's becoming less, again, I'm going to zoom in, but see, it doesn't look anymore like a pencil painted that drew this, right? It doesn't look like a sketch. It looks more like a computerized line. As the less detail, the less I do. And here, when I'm going to do the less of these details that I ask it to have, the more symbolic the image is going to be. Okay, so I keep trying that, try with the threshold, get rid of the noise, and definitely from what we had at the beginning to what we have now, we're talking about something different. So you can change the effect of what you're looking for just by how you trace it. So that's what I want for this one. I want it to look like it's not an actual handmade sketch. There's a couple of things that you can do too. This one by automatically had the ignore white turned on, and that's good. Okay, see now when I want to start showing you things, I'm going to turn the preview off because if not this one, I'll turn the preview off so I can show you. Ignore white is not something that's going to make any difference right now if you turn it on or off. It's after you expand. And in this case, we want to have it turned on, which it was by default because of the setting that we had. But if not, you need to remember to turn it on. That way, what's going to exist when we're done with the trace is only the black lines. And I won't have to go in there and get rid of all the white like we did with the bird that we had to go and get rid of all that weird background. By saying ignore white, it's going to delete it. That said, what's inside this space will be filled with none, like it won't be a shape. So you won't be able to, let me explain. You won't be able to fill it with pink. It'll just be nothingness. This will be a line. Versus if you want to be able to fill this with green later to make it look like a turtle, you might as well not ignore white. And then this will be a black line and this will be a white line, a white shape that you can turn into green or fill with a pattern. Does that make sense? So we can try it both ways and you'll see what I mean. Right now, if I ignore white, I'll have line art. But the line art won't be fillable. I won't be able to select the inside of this to fill it with green because it'll be nothingness. It'll just be a line. Does that make sense what I'm saying? I think you've got understood a little bit enough to see the difference. So although it makes sense to say ignore white, I'm actually going to turn it off because I want that white to be a shape that I can then fill in with a pattern or a color or something. And then I'll just have to delete the outside shape of white. So in this case, by thinking through what I want, I actually want to not ignore white. Okay. All right. There's a couple more things. Method. Remember how I showed you that if I took a little patch of the bird and opened it, it left a white space? That would be depending on the method. If we make the things that overlap or if we make them make a hole, create cutouts. So the default is always to make the hole. I could have had it overlap. It doesn't matter. In this case, it would have mattered in the bird. So we're going to leave it like that. Okay. I've moved enough stuff around. I might want let me see if I move the threshold a little bit more, what happens? I might lose it all. I might get less. Oh, I turned the preview off. Now I need to turn the preview on to have it do it. No, the lines became a bit thinner, but in the end, it's still pretty much, yeah, so I've got thinner lines now. Okay, so I like that. And when I'm done with all my making it look the way I want it to look, now I'm gonna head over here and expand. All right, it's expanded. Now the image trace box kind of goes dead because it's been expanded. So I'm going to turn it off. And now here I have my image. Now remember that we did not say ignore white, okay? I checked that off. So what that means is that this white is a shape and this white is a shape. So now I can, for now it's easier, let's go ahead and ungroup. And then I can select this and see it's this shape that, let me just show it to you. It's a shape that if I were to want to paint with orange, I can, because it was a shape. I didn't say ignore white. And as much as I can do that to the background, well, then I can also select this shape that's inside the turtle and maybe fill it with, and of course, this probably wouldn't be what you would fill a turtle color with, but just showing you, because it was a fillable space, ignoring the lines. Does that make sense? So now I'm going to go ahead and choose this one to fill. And then choose this one. And then somehow or another, I can end up selecting and filling my turtle. I think that's the green that I chose, etc. So you'd have to go in and choose all the little bits and pieces, as opposed to, anyway, as opposed to, had I, now I'm going to place this file one more time to show you the difference of ignore white or not white, because it depends what you want to do with it, if you want to ignore it white or not. And this one was called Pencil Sketch. And you guys can just watch this or do it with me, where if I put this bird in there, this bird, Jesus, this turtle in here, and I say image trace, and I'm going to go back to sketch start. I'm going to say, okay. I'm not going to change all the settings per se. Right now, all I'm going to do is show you that this one does say ignore white. Okay. So this one says ignore white. So I'm going to go ahead and expand. So now this has also been traced, but there's nothing there. There's nothing grabbable. This is nothing, and this is nothing. So if I try to select, there's not, to paint this, I can't. There's, you know what I'm trying to say? There's nothing there to paint. There's only the lines that I can fill with a different color if I want. And there you go. Now it's a turtle, but there's nothing there. This is floating and it has no background, versus this was filled with white, and thus it could be changed and turned into another color. Does that make sense, you guys? So that's the difference of ignoring white or not ignoring white. I'm going to put these here so you guys can see the comparison. Now that doesn't mean, and now actually let me move back down here. That doesn't mean that you can't make now a shape of your own. You can try to trace and create a shape of your own over here where you, I don't know, I'm going to zoom in and try to give a little, make an eyeball here. No, I need to lock this one, or I can't fit underneath. Let me go lock this pink turtle. There we go. And so now I can make a little circle of my own. Oh, I forget that I'm in the other tool. So I need to make a little circle of my own, which is right now filling with pink, that I can now go fill with, say I want this turtle to have blue eyes, and then I go to my layers and I put it underneath, right? So basically I can fill in and paint it. Well, this wouldn't be actually the lids and the eyes, but you know what I'm trying to say. So you can create your spaces. But in this case, if the intention was originally to paint it, it might be easier to just leave the white and select and fill with color. Okay. Now, that said, this was a straight sketch. I'm gonna move in again. Let me select this guy. Did I lock him? Yeah, I locked him. So this was a straight sketch at the presets of sketch. And this is the kind of lines that I got again at 800%, right? So it looks very weird with little thingies that come in and out. So what I can do now is say, even though probably at 100% I wouldn't see that, but I could go and affect that a little bit, right? So in this case, I'm going to select this layer. Let me ungroup it to make it a bit easier than having to click in and out. I'm going to select this line right there, and then I could did I unlock it? Yeah, just make sure that I have it selected. It doesn't seem like it's selected. I guess it wasn't. Okay, so I'm going to select this little tiny bit right there. And maybe I want to use the little eraser, bring it down, and maybe erase that little salient little tip or something like that, right? So you don't have to live with the stuff that you don't completely like. I'll go and erase that little bit there, erase that little bit there, right? To keep modifying it to look better. You can do that with both, but be careful, because in this one, it's just lines that you're working with. You can do it easier versus if you try to erase something here. So again, good and bad of both options. I'm going to go up to this one. If I decide that I want to erase that little thingy that pops up from there, and I do, so I'm going to try to erase that. That doesn't fix that this white shape doesn't follow. So if I now fill that with a color, let's make his flippers yellow. See, that turned into a little hole. So then I need to fix that. So like I would have to go to that path, and I would have to just, move things around. So anyway, just for better or for worse, if it's line art, you can fix it. But if it has a filled, like here, let me go back to regular. So if it has a fill that you're going to use and you take those little tippies out, then that doesn't follow through with it, right? It doesn't go in because that white shape counted on it outlining around that little line. So you can't really fix those spurs as well. You can, but you need to then go in and fix that little shape as well. Okay, so now maybe hopefully if you have a chance to do both versions, to have and then fill in with color the turtle that is fill-inable. I don't know why I'm making this turtle yellow, but I guess it's cute. And then show me your versions of, I could have probably put different, you know what, I'm going to make these little inner bits a darker yellow, so it looks like it has a bit of shape. And of course, this is where gradients would be good, right? To give it a little shape that it does like that, you would have a gradient that goes lighter to darker and whatnot. I'm going to choose these 3 and just make it a tiny bit darker orange. I guess this little bit could be a little bit dark. And again, I'm not choosing different colors. I'm going with the colors that came in the basic pattern. So I'm very limited, but you choose all these different ones. I'm actually choose only the bottom ones, orange, and so on and so forth. That one, the deeper orange, and this one, the lighter orange. So yeah, when you want to do this kind of thing, you want the lines to be as simplified as possible. If we hadn't simplified these lines, then it'd be so many little ins and outs that it would be harder to paint it up and to fill it up. Does that make sense? Okay. Versus the line art one, which I need to pick up. Oh, one more thing about the line art one. So notice that I had ungrouped it. So even though it was a line, or it seemed more like a line art, it still is different bits and pieces. So if I try to select it and move it, see how I moved only a little bit of it? Or if I move that and move a little bit. So just because it looks like a line art doesn't mean that it all goes in one piece. So if you do this and you do want to keep it as one piece, then first of all, keep it as grouped. Or we can try to join the paths. Now the joining path sometimes works well and sometimes makes a disaster. So let's see what happens this time. I'm going to go to Object, Path, and Join. Oh, because I have so many types of paths that it can't work. Okay, so that's not going to work. But what we can do is use the shape builder tool. And is that going to work? Can we drag it around? Let me just test a few. I don't know if it's going to work with everything, but let me give it a try. No, it just filled them up. So that's not going to work. Must be a way. I'm going to move that little eyeball out because it's not. You guys keep feeling the other one while I guess a little bit with the different tools how to make this one. Yeah, it's not going to work because it's just going to fill them up. Well, I just united. Unite seems to have worked. Yeah, Unite worked. Okay, so I went to the path builder and I clicked the Pathfinder tool and I clicked to Unite. And when I did that, I've been left now with something that's only one shape. So now it is movable around as one piece, and it's not because I'm missing a main group. No. Yeah, now it's one piece. No. I keep. Nope, it's not. What it keeps doing is it keeps grouping it when I say unite. It doesn't really unite them. It just groups them. But when I go check, they're only together because I've grouped them, but not because it's united them. So I don't know right now how I would put this together as one. Trying to think about it, think it through, and I don't see what other step I'd be needing. So there has to be a way, but it's not coming to mind right now. There's so many ways to do everything in Illustrator that sometimes the fact that there's so many ways, you kind of forget of some of the options if it's something you haven't done in a while. Anyway, in this case, just keep it grouped, select it all, and change all the color at once, and it acts as if it were one thing, right? But it truly isn't one thing. So I'm gonna make this whole thing green. Anyway, all right, so there you go. So that's different ways of using things that you've created and you've sketched to make into shapes or logos. Of course, I could have I could have deleted the background and have it just be a shape. I choose to use the background because it sounded fun, but it's not like you need to keep things together or anything like that. Be careful though, because it is a shape cut out in the shape of the element, just like we did with the turtle. So it's not like you can just, move it and make it bigger. if this is part of the shape that you trace that needs to stay part of the shape you trace. So if you want to add more background to that, you would have to add another rectangle here that's orange to add to that to make it be, you know, more than that, because again, it's a cutout hole. Now, I'm going to do that one more trace. I'm going to place that one last time. I keep forgetting the name of this one's pencil sketch. There it is, pencil sketch. I'm going to change it to turtle sketch because then it'll make more sense to me. So I'm going to put him in here one last time. And this time I'm going to image trace it. I'm going to go back to the good old sketched art and the warning that it'll be slow. And now I'm going to change the method, okay, from that one where it makes a little hole, the hole that I've been showing you, to this one where it overlaps, okay? So that's the main difference. And I'm going to leave the rest of the settings the same. I'm not going to change any other settings, and I'm going to expand. Okay, so now we have the last version of turtle here. And this time, oh, this one wasn't ignore white. So it doesn't matter. I had to ungroup. So I just ungrouped it, okay, to see what happened. And what's left underneath these holes, see, all these shapes, is a fill, right? So by leaving a fill there, this happens to be a shape that's white, but I could, let's make a bit of color so you can see, but it's really a shape that I'm moving out that's white. And when I move that shape out, underneath it has its own shape. Does that make sense? So it doesn't leave a hole like it did over there. Because by the way, this hole that this one leaves isn't a shape-filled hole. It's truly a hole, right? Like that's not selectable. It's just nothingness, right? As opposed to this one, that what it does is move out. And again, I'm going to put a piece of white in here. So I could then get rid of the parts and pieces. And again, I'm leaving them out here and it's hard to see because they're all white. Here, let's turn the view, show transparency grid up so you can see that all these things are being taken out of the way. And then I'm left with just a silhouette or something like that. So that space exists as a space as well. And I can clean and change the color of that space as well, that negative space that's left in the background. Okay, I don't use this one much. It's a bit more confusing. There's a few times when I've needed it because I need something there. I just thought I'd show it to you. I'm doing undo, undo, undo. Because they all present the same way. They look similar enough, but really how they are created changes depending on your selection. The default selection is, the default setting is always, is to leave it in this mode where if you move something, it makes a hole. And I guess that's when I always use, I'm very accustomed to it, versus this one where you end up having like bits and pieces that I've had to do once where I left just a line and then I painted the background, somebody went it done that way, but it just seemed harder to me and it didn't make sense. So now in the bird, it could have made a bit of sense because if you take that little bit out, now you leave a hole. If you turn that little bit out, at least you'd have a color that you could color again into something versus a hole that you can't color. Does that make sense? But anyway, just showing you details. I think that's a bit more detail than we need to know. So go ahead and give me a little screenshot of whatever you've colored and then make sure that as homework, you guys trace something. Again, I have other files here that you can trace. I provided you with other photos that you can trace. This woman, which I use a lot other times. It's really fun to trace her because she has these little holes in her gloves. It's like lace gloves. And so you see some fun stuff. Here's some painted hills. But if not, bring in any photos of stuff that you own. Now, here's an example of a finished trace. So I'm going to go over to Illustrator and open, say file, open. And it's the first one, the 4-color Santi image tray. So this is a portrait of my son that I traced in 4 colors. But can you imagine that when I first traced it, his shadows weren't red, his face wasn't blue. It was just, I created a trace that I got as many, I got it so that the 4 colors later I changed to the colors I wanted, right? But the original colors were more natural to whatever the portrait was. And then I used the whole recolor thing that we did before to change that into this shape. So say, let's go back over here, no, to where I said the bird trace. Say that I want to, I'm going to put some of these turtles together. So let's go get that woman. I just said, I'm looking at the time. We have a bit of time. I'll do it with you guys. So you guys can do it with any other portrait or friend or group that you want. But right now, I'm going to drag it over here and let's bring in the woman. What's her photo? What's her file name? I always use Bridge, so I don't remember file names. It's called photo.jpg. That's as simple as it is. Let's go bring in the photo.jpg. Let's say place. And I'm going to make her be about yay big to fill the screen. And we're going to do a little bit of this kind of thing with her, in the sense that we're going to trace her to be only a few colors, and then we're going to change those colors to see if we can make her be more like a graphic art. And I'm going to let you guys choose how many colors, and I'm going to let you guys choose what colors you want to make them. But just consider, this is the idea. This one is probably, I wrote 4 colors. It's probably 4 color. And you think, no, I only see 3 colors. Well, not really, because don't forget that even what's neutral is a color. So this is red, blue, beige, and black. So that's the 4th color. Okay. So even if you see only 3 colors, black is considered a color here. So I'm going to go ahead and say image trace. And I'm going to go with, I don't know, 3. Let's just start with 6 colors and see what I can reduce it to. Let's say okay to that. And this one is a big file, so it takes a while each time. So definitely go ahead and do the whole, turn off the preview to change your settings, or it'll take forever to get this one done. This one is a very big file. I'm not seeing any questions from anyone, so I keep talking. Is anything you want to know or test, or if you're bringing in a file of your own to see how it works, please ask me, show me. I don't like just lecturing. I want it to be practical. I want to make sure that you're doing it. And since there's so few of us and you're all very capable, it's kind of going fast, but don't hesitate and to stop me and ask me things. Okay, so this one was 6 colors. I'll go with 6 colors. I'll try to do it with 6. Excuse me. I'll go with 6 colors. So I'm just gonna expand it. You guys choose other amounts of colors, try other stuff, and I'm going to try this one. So this is more like do it yourself and ask me questions. So I'll be working on this one while you work on this one. I'm going to expand. I've worked on this one so much that I don't want to do in the past in other classes that I don't want to spend a lot of time doing the details, but you're welcome to play around with her a bit more. Let me just show you for a second how cool her laced gloves appear in the illustrated version. Isn't that funny? Just like, it does a great job of tracing it, but it's going to be a bit harder when we change the colors. If we were to try to select a color like we did with the turtle and turn it green or turn it yellow, we're going to go crazy. So for this, we definitely should use what I taught you last week, which is the object edit colors, recolor artwork. So I'm at my point where I should stop showing you new things and ask you questions, but I just asked you. If you have any questions, no one is in particular asking, so I'm going to keep going with this. But remember, this is a good time to ask your personal questions. So I'm going with recolor artwork. And I guess I could turn things around like that, but that's not so much my intention. Let me reset. I want to go to the advanced options. And I want to choose colors. So like her light pink, I want to choose a new color. So these are the 6 colors that are available. White, remember the background, that is a color. So I might want to make the background a different color. But then her arms are also white. So then her arms would change, right? So I don't know, I can make the white a different tone. I have no idea if I'm going to make her into a freak or if I'm going to make her good. I'm going to make whatever's white be yellow. Why is it not changing?
My edit colors, then recolor with preset is grayed out.
Have you selected your shape? Have
Well-
you expanded your shape?
No, I
And then-
squeezed it to fit the rectangle. I didn't expand her.
Yeah, so let me cancel this for a second. Once you did the image trace, you need to hit the expand first.
Okay,
Because without that, it's not yet vector.
okay, here we go. Thank you.
Now you select the box and now it's all Illustrator vector paths. So now it's ready to be played around with. Okay,
Thank you.
you're welcome. Okay, back to this. Let me go to my advanced options. And I don't know, let's see. The dark brown. What if I go for blues? Go to dark blue. It's not changing here. Oh, there we go. That needed to be turned on so that the art begins to change. That's pretty cool. I'm gonna make the light brown. I'm gonna go with her skin. What colors will her skin be? Go with light blues for her skin and see how that works out. I don't know if it'll be horrible, if it'll be great. Might work. Ah, nope, that one really didn't work. It's really light. I'm looking alien. If I gotta go with a different, go with yellows instead. Yeah, I'll go with yellows instead for her skin. That's better. All right. I don't know. I kind of like that. If I want to give her a background. Kind of works. Whatever. Just different. And then in this case, if I had given the white a color, then it would have been her arms would have been the same color as the background. So now I'm going to sub-select the white background and give it its own fill. Now, is that too much? Yeah, it's probably too much for that tone. Just gonna go with orange. No. Deep blue. That's good. So it's just that one. I'm trying to stay with what colors are available to me offhand. Not sure I like that blue, but anyway, here's my final. What I did. A little bit strange here on this arm. I was zoomed in and I saw the rest of it, but over here, now that I see that, I don't like it. But anyway, there's my, I hate that blue. Let me change that. Ah, that's good. I think I like that better. All right, so there's my attempt at illustrating this photo. Not sure that I like that deep, it's that second green tone, but it does a weird thing on her arm here. But anyway, in general, it's okay-ish. Maybe that green's the one that doesn't work. I'm talking to myself. Can you tell that this is, the other day I was working with my son and he kept telling me, you don't need to tell me that. You need to tell me that. I'm like, I'm just talking to myself. He thought I was telling him stuff. I'm just making choices here. Go with something. I like that bit. Okay. I like that a bit better. Does look like she has like weird gloves on her. All right, how about you guys? How are you doing? Show me your stuff, ask me your questions, post your options. One more time, here's the Padlet. Make a little screenshot of this one. I'm going to go finish my colored turtle. I didn't finish. I know. It's my warning. Classes ending soon.
Deanna, this one was fun, but I am
Yes.
gonna have to replay your video to get better practice, because when I turn away as you're speaking, I lose instructions. So it was a cute one.
No problem. I totally get it. I'm just should have put different gradients on this. Gradient tool. Drag it top to bottom. No, bottom to top. Anyway. Multicolored little tail. All right. If you want anything now that I can help you with, then Vera, tell me. But if you'd rather just wait and I know you do that. I know you go back and do your thing, so that's fine too. Just tell me.
I just wanted to learn how to draw a beach ball.
Oh, I forgot. Yes. Let me go grab. Now I've left only 4 minutes, but let me save this and let me go find. I need to find the name of the file that has the beaches so that I can see.
It was in the beach
That's a-
house.
Here it is. Here we go, beach ball. Yeah, that's gonna take some symmetrical. Let's go ahead and I don't know if I have enough time. But
It's
let's
okay, you could do it
bring
next
it-
time.
bring it in. Do I have an open file here? I'm gonna bring it in here. I'm gonna delete all this stuff. And I'm gonna place that beach house. And just so that I can have it handy too. And in fact, you know what? I can crop the rest of this for a little bit, just to this house, so that I can make it bigger without having to make everything else bigger. Cool, and then I'm gonna make that a bit bigger. So that's what we're trying to do, which is basically a beach ball, yeah, but trying to make this beach ball. Let me crop again. So we leave it just at around beach ball size. Okay. So this is kind of what we're trying to do. Now, I've stretched it so much that now it's all pixelated and stuff, but you get the idea. So basically here we have a big circle and a circle, second circle. That's really easy. But these lines are not that easy to get so that they look correct, right? So my first thought here would be to first do them like, and I'm thinking like a straight. I don't think I've ever made a beach ball, so I'm just going by instincts here. I would probably first try to create something that, one of the tools that's missing here. Let me see if it would help. The polar grid tool. Let me select this tool and bring it here out into place. Where do I bring it out? Polar grid tool. I need to put it on top of something to bring it out. It's not, before these tools appeared further over. Now it's not letting me drag it out. Oh. Why is it not letting me? I managed to make the other ones work, but here it's not. It's like it's opening because I want this polar grid tool. Because this is going to help us a lot.
Or is it usually docked?
It's, yeah, so I'm going to have to close this and reset, close this up and let me go to the Essentials Classic because I don't know how to otherwise. So it's here under regular shapes. So they're under open shapes. So here I have my line next to the T and here's that polar grid tool. because I really don't see right now how to bring it in. So anyway, I had to go to my essential shapes. And this tool will allow me to make a shape. Let me first move these things out of the way. So here's my tool. I made a little shape. Let me make it again. Let's put some fill so you can see. So I'm gonna make it, I don't know, let me give it a yellow and orange fill. When I create it, if I create this from the center, it's like the stars and things like that, where you can say how many lines you want it to have. So I can go up and down and choose many more lines or none. But then I can choose how many divisions I want it to have or none. So right now, whoops, I left it down here, but I've moved it up here. So now if I were to do this, why did I end up having no fills? I'm filling the whole thing. I believe it's a grouped object. I'm going to ungroup. Yeah. So now I can choose. Is it? No. I'm just testing out this thing. I'm not sure. Nope. It's one circle, so it's not showing me. It's not a grouped object. I'm going to undo that fill. So what are those lines? I was thinking this might help me. This is the path. So what can't I imitate and copy these paths? I'm just trying to do it
I have a beach ball if you'd like me to show how I did mine.
Shayna, yeah. I'm trying to see
It's
if I
not
can
that
do
I
it.
didn't do it. Go
I'm
ahead.
trying to see if I can do it the mechanic, like with the tools they give us. Otherwise, we can
Yeah.
just draw the paths, which
Yeah.
hopefully is that probably what you did, which is
I
fine.
did
Go ahead and
multiple
show.
circles. Yeah. Sorry.
Oh, overlapping circles. That would be a great idea.
Yeah.
That would be a great way to do it. Go ahead and share yours while I keep playing on this one, because it's already 12:32. And as usual, I
Yeah.
have a class coming up very soon. I'm going to see if I can make this one. I'm going to give it no fill minus stroke.
Okay. Can everyone see that?
Yep, we can.
Yeah.
So that
Okay,
looks
let me-
perfect. And yeah, show us what you did.
See the lines. I made
Yeah.
one big circle, one little circle, but I didn't do that one yet. One big circle, and then more circles overlapping it, and then I just cropped it, or I got rid of the outer parts out here with the
Yeah. You know what's interesting? That
tool?
would work with compound paths.
Yeah.
Then you could still keep moving them, but that makes a lot of sense. Make one
Yeah,
circle,
so that's just
and then no, that's perfect. And then
it's
I'm
different.
testing it here. Put another one. I have my weird circle on top of mine, so let me go for a regular circle. Okay, so let me. Oh yeah, I see what you mean. Gotta get rid of my weird
Yeah.
polar circle.
It is
thing.
a little confusing, but it got the job done.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Okay, so let me try to imitate what you're saying now. I'm going to stop that share. And again, I do need to go, but let me give it a try. So here's what I'm trying to do now. So if the bottom one is, for example, that bluish color.
The
Right.
outline view might help as well if people
Yeah.
do that.
But first, let's make the circle in between, the one that's going to be. Let me go back to essentials so you guys can see, so I can see my layers easily. So first I'm going to make another little circle. So I'm going to make a duplicate here and make it the tiny circle and have it be that center point, right? That everything is going to emanate from, so to say, right there. And I'm going to paint it white because that's what they have. I know. That's my warning about the other class. So anyway, so that one I'm gonna put on the layers on top. And then this one, you start, see what, this is what she's saying, and the same size or bigger? Huh. So as long as
I
they
did,
overlap there,
yeah.
then
I did same size and then I just adjusted
it-
as I
put
went.
it
Yeah.
there, yeah. So I'm gonna have to think this through because you need to bring it in. How did you not do it taking? Because this gives me one edge, like that line, right? For example, is being
Mhm.
given to me by this. So I'm trying to imitate that line right there. So
Mhm.
there's that line, right?
Mhm.
Did you then cut it and then bring the other one and cut and bring the other one, or start putting one of them on top of the other? Like
I
have
did
to
on
make it a
top of the
different
other.
color. I'm gonna have to make this one a different color so I can distinguish it. But I'm trying to look at that red over there, right? So I'm
Yeah.
putting that one about yay,
Yeah.
and the leftover between this and that. So now I'm going to select them all.
Yeah. And I did that
Hold
like
on.
multiple
I'm going to
times,
get
like
rid of
2
this
times.
out of the way because this isn't right. So then I select all of that and let me see if I go to the path shape builder. I now take
And
this out and then I
Yeah.
take that out and I take that out and I take that out. Actually, that one could stay as my second one. And I take this out. Oh, but it's taken out the thing that's underneath as well. So now I have to
Good.
separate it and take only these two and take this out.
Yeah. And then you use the point, the A key, when you press the A key, that selector tool,
Mhm.
and you can adjust the points as you wish.
I want these two. Divide these two. Anyway, I'm going to create something I can take out from there, but I might end up having to recreate that bottom. But that kind of worked for that ish. Gonna have to recreate this one. But that's okay because I didn't think it through ahead of time. But I'll go and recreate that one. I should have made more circles. I should have left more circles here of the same one again and again. Let me actually do that. I'm going to undo so that I can have a copy of the basic shape over here so that when I mess up with these, I can bring one back. Okay, so then I take the parts that I don't want. Option minus, and then I think I can take that one out again. So that left me with that. And then I'll take that one out too. Then I'm going to bring a copy of this one back. And I mean, there's so many ways of doing this again that maybe this makes more or less sense. I'm going to copy this one back, put it in the bottom. And then I do that same thing again for the next one and the next one. And then I have to align them because right now they're not aligned. I don't know, maybe you did them all at once, but I'm just thinking of doing it individually.
No, I did it like that.
Do it like this one, then you create a whole nother. So now I'm going to put two others. I'm finding that second line, that one there. And then I'm going to bring this over to kind of break it. And then I'm going to select that, and that. And go here and no. I need to select
You didn't select
that.
the
Yeah, the
there you go.
bottom one, not that. The bottom one and this, and that bottom one. Cool. Now I can go and get rid of this and this, and that, and this. That works, except for now the white thing has to go on top. And then I have to put one of these in there again, et cetera, right? Oh, but I got rid of the blue one now. The original one that I had made is underneath, so I need to move these guys down. Didn't move them, I just keep moving the layers down. So anyway, and now that one can go. Okay, so now I'm down to 2, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so now I've got that and that one, and then I have to do it for this one. Does that make sense? It's not simple, and my curves aren't perfect, but keep trying. Right now I'm doing it knowing that I have to teach another class in 20 minutes that I gotta go. But
Okay.
yeah, it's a combination of bits and pieces and taking out what doesn't belong. The second circle I put here, I didn't put in a good position, so this isn't really a good corner. I think the first one was fine, but this one I would do better. But anyway, I'm gonna let you play around with that, and I'm gonna play around with that polar circle because I wanted to show you how you can then guide where those circles go. But I haven't used it in a while, so I need to remember how to do that, because you can make the center be right like that, and then the angles be in the corner, and then you can warp it. But I think that this idea might actually be better than the one I had. So, all right, guys, I really have to go. Thank you, Shayna. Thank you for your question, Vera. Hopefully you can
Thank
play
you.
around a little bit with that. And if needed, we can have a bit more time to work on it again next week, which will be our final class. So you guys need to sign up for other classes. I'll hope to reach out to you during the week and tell you more about that. Bye, guys. See you in a week. Do some hard Illustrator work. Fun. Take care. Bye, Linda.